Welcome, IB Nation. We are here for the post-game show, recapping Notre Dame's 45-32 victory over the North Carolina Tar Heels. It was a very eventful game, which we'll get into. I mean, Vince, I am Ryan Roberts, Director of Recruiting here at Irish Breakdown. Got Mr. Sean Davis to my left. You're right if you're looking on the screen. He is our recruiting analyst here at Irish Breakdown. And, of course, at the bottom of the screen, Mr. Vince Dario, our football analyst here.
Just holding you guys up.
Hey, man, that's what you do. You're Atlas right now. You're holding up the world right now.
Anchor, all right. That could go either way.
In this situation, Vince, you are doing the good work, sir. You are doing the good work. So we're going to have Brian Driscoll on the show here in a couple minutes. He was, of course, boots on the ground in North Carolina. There he is. Brian, you didn't miss much.
What's up, everybody?
You missed a minute and 23 seconds.
Notre Dame won, right? I just checked the boards and Twitter for a second. I thought I might have been at the wrong game today. Notre Dame won, right?
Okay. Yes, they did.
I had someone on Twitter tell me that Notre Dame wasn't going to make the BCS championship this year, and I said it hasn't been the BCS since 2014, sir.
Well, you should have said you're darn right. They're not going to make the BCS.
Yeah, I guess he was not wrong. Yeah. But exciting days, fellas. Exciting days. 45-32 victory. Over North Carolina. Expected some offensive firepower for North Carolina. I think the final total for them, though, is a little misleading when you consider a few of the big plays they had, a couple coverage busts on Notre Dame's side. But the positives, because we are going to spend a lot of time talking about what was a really impressive and much-needed showing on the offensive side of the football for Notre Dame. 3 running backs, Audric Estime, Logan Diggs, and Chris Tyree went over 100 yards all-purpose individually, over 300 yards altogether combined yardage. Audric Estime over 130 yards, had a touchdown. Did have a late fumble, but he was the hammer that we needed today. You saw the explosiveness of Chris Tyree between the tackles and getting out in space a little bit. And Logan Diggs had one of his better games as a member of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. So big day. Got to mention Drew Pine. Very clean football game. Made the plays he needed to make. Offensive line looked fantastic. Brian, you were boots on the ground, man. So let's start with you. Some of your key takeaways for today, other than what I just kind of rambled through there for a couple seconds.
Well, I mean, look, this is the coach's dream. This kind of game is like a coach's dream when you're a coach taking over a program, because you can look at it. And I wrote an article after the game, and it was about the defense. And we'll get into the specifics of the offense and defense. I'm talking big picture, but it was like Notre Dame gave up 367 yards and 32 points to a team that came into this game averaging 51.3 points per game, and I think it was like 547 yards per game, right? And they held them to 367 yards and 32 plays, or 32 points. And the frustrating part of it is 215 of those yards came on 4 plays, right? And so as a coach, and the thing I wrote about in the article was, this is the coach's dream because you got the win, first of all.
Yeah,
but there's things that you're gonna be able to look at this game if you're Al Gold and Tommy Rees and be like, this is what we are capable of when we play Notre Dame football. Drake May going into the fourth quarter was 12 of 26 going into the fourth quarter. And you say, this is exactly what we're capable of, guys, when we do this, and it's like 90% of the plays. But then there's enough stuff in this game, guys, that you can point to and say, we've got to clean this up, we've got to clean this up, and we've got to clean this up. And guys, if we can clean that up, we have a chance to be really, really good, because we did go on the road and beat a 3-1 football team in a game that, let's be honest, guys, after about the first 10 minutes of play, was not really an overly competitive game.
Agreed.
Outside of a couple big plays. And so that's kind of the takeaway is, it's okay to be happy with this win. It's okay to admit that there are things to work on, but still sit back and say, guys, this was an enjoyable victory where Notre Dame hammered them. And, Drew Pine did what he needed to do. The running backs did what they needed to do. The defense did what they needed to do for the most part. And we'll talk about some of the things that weren't great and all that type of stuff as we get into the show, guys. But today we saw a glimpse of what we thought this team was going to be. Mm-hmm. Efficient plus explosive, 3-headed monster at running back, beast of an offensive of a tight end, and an offensive line that when they are playing their game can just bully people. Fellas, for the last quarter and a half, North Carolina knew exactly what was coming, and they still couldn't stop it. Yep, the only thing that stopped Notre Dame today was Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And, this easily, Ryan, what did I say to you in the car? This easily could have been a 63-17 game if Notre Dame just cleaned up 5 plays. Just fourth and 1. I still don't understand. Tommy Rees called a brilliant game. I had one big beef. Why are you going with a quarterback sneak on 4th and 1 with a 195-pound quarterback when you got a 230-round monster behind him, right?
And they literally brought in Estime for that play. Like, he wasn't even in the game. He came in for 4th down.
That was the one. It was like 5 plays, guys. That one, you had the fumble by Estime. I don't know what the heck was going on that last play that they gave up the long touchdown. And then the play by Clarence Lewis where he blew a coverage, and then the Jaden Mickey one where if you were there, it happened right in front of me in the press box. Jaden was right there. He jumped too soon. It was as simple as that. If he jumps on a normal time, he probably bats that ball down. Yeah. So you take 5 plays away, and this is a 40-point victory, fellas. And so that's stuff you can look at and say, fella, we got to clean this stuff up, guys. We've got to get better. We've got to clean up this, clean up that. You got 2 weeks to do it. But, man, there was a lot to take out of this. And one of my favorite things from today, guys, who was it? I can't find it. It already got pushed down. Somebody texted, here we go. Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker.
Right.
Fair catch you is dead.
Look, even if he gets 10 yards.
But what they do, guys, Ryan, did you get that data we talked about?
Didn't get it. Didn't get all of it. Nope.
So like the thing is, guys, like, you talk about just like little things. Like there was one play where I think he fielded it like the 15 and returned it 12 yards or something like that to like the 27. That's big. As a play caller at my own 15 compared to at my own 25, 27 is a big difference, right?
Yep.
And a big part of it was they didn't set up returns. They rushed the punter every single time. Now, they never got one. But after the first couple, he's like, okay, they're coming after me. And he was line driving them. Man, fellas, there was so much I liked about this game, and there was just so much that we saw about it that makes you say this team is not where it needs to be yet. It's not. But, man, they not only turned the corner, but they started driving down that new road if they can build on today. And it was really the last 6 – well, let me rephrase that. Up until the 4th quarter, for about 5 quarters in a row, first 3 of this game, last 2 of the last game, this is the Notre Dame football team we thought we were going to see. And, that
just took 4 games to get there, unfortunately. Yeah. And, I agree. I agree with everything that you said, obviously.
Can I say one thing, Vince? Yep. One thing that's going to really piss me off is when people are like, this is why Drew Pine should have started.
Okay.
This was a terrible defense. And my thing I asked Ryan and Vince for the game, where was this game plan?
Right.
The first 2 weeks, right? But the point is, so can we chill with that crap in the chat, please? That's really going to bother me. Can't we just enjoy this game and the guys that played today without trying to tear down other guys? Can't we just say, great job, Drew Pine, without turning this into that BS? But today was a good day, man. Sorry,
I'm with you.
Really ticking me off, man.
I was trying to ignore it. I was trying to be the bigger guy and ignore some of the comments that were made. Can we? Well, no, we'll talk about the defense. I'm sure we usually talk offense first and then defense. There's some stuff I want to talk about defensively, but offensively, big picture, game plan wise, I mean, this is the second game in a row where I thought Tommy Rees called an excellent game plan. Not only did he call a great game, but I thought he prepared and schemed specifically for the personnel that was in the game. I mean, he schemed against the defense that he was playing against, right? He used the deficient linebacker play for North Carolina to his advantage on numerous occasions. I mean, the play design was excellent. It was excellent. And, he deserves as much, grief as he was getting for the first 2 games, right? And deservedly so. Don't get me wrong, right?
So.
He deservedly so deserves credit for the last 2 games, right? Maybe that's because of a quarterback switch. Maybe not. I don't know the reasoning. But the issue to me, what I mean by that is, we can get into what I mean by that later. But
no,
here's go ahead. Go ahead.
You open the door, man. Go. I mean,
I did open the door. I did open the door. Okay, so it feels like to me, and
not that door, Vince.
Not
that's
door.
The one for tomorrow.
Okay, but that's what I thought you was like. All right, I'll go.
No.
Okay.
No.
So, bottom line, the last 2 games have been really good by Tommy Rees. I've been
game and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been very impressed with him and what he's been able to do. It feels like he understands his personnel now, and he understands what they can do well. So,
Sean, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a lot I think there's a lot to look at as far as what's changed. But I think the biggest change in the last 6 quarters, it's been the play of the Notre Dame offensive line. It's a lot easier to call plays when your offensive line blocks, run, and pass the way that it has the last 6 quarters. This was as good of an offensive line performance. Again, bad defense. But they did to a bad defense what you're supposed to do when you're a really, really good offensive line. But I think, to me, that's the thing that we're not talking about a lot today. What have we said all year, Sean? The backs haven't been playing poorly. Backs need a line. Today, the line played well, and the Notre Dame in the last 6 quarters, the lines played well, and the Notre Dame running backs have looked like the monsters that we thought they were going to be.
And that's why Drew Pine looked a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he'll continue to look better than what Tyler Buckner was able to put on the field and perform up to in the first 2 games. Of course, Tyler probably played against the best team that they'll play against all year in his first game. So that's kind of apples to oranges. But for me, can I tell you, both of you guys, what this game meant to me?
Absolutely.
Because I think, this is going to kind of push back what one of the biggest complaints and whines of the fan base was. First of all, let me start off by saying it's a thin line between this team being a top 10 team and 3-1 going to the desert. They're literally 8 minutes away. 8 good minutes of football away from being 3-1 with their only loss to Ohio State, headed to the desert off a bye week.
Sean, you talking about the last 8 of the fourth quarter against Marshall?
Yes, absolutely.
When they were up 15-12? Yeah, I got you.
And what I mean by saying that, from that point until today, the one thing I know for sure and feel confident about is that this coaching staff can coach.
Yeah.
They can coach. When you see differences in the offensive line, the way the defensive line responded last week, heck, I would even say the line, Prince Colley came in. He flashed.
Mm-hmm.
They finally watched film. Ryan, we talked about this. Al Golden watched film and said, you know what? Let me take Maris out of the middle and get him on the edge and get him in space and move him around and let him spy on the quarterback and put him in the best position to make him the best player he can be. They're finding out who they are on both sides of the ball. They're coaching to it, and they're developing guys, and they're getting them on the field. Like you said, Jaden Mickey was right there. He was right there. Benjamin Morrison, late in the fourth, just panicked. He was right there. He just panicked and grabbed the guy for no reason. He didn't have to do it. This team is in good hands. And everybody after 2 games that was fretting or fretful and worried about whether or not Marcus Freeman was worthy enough to be the head coach, whether or not Harry Heastan had lost his luster as an offensive line coach, whether or not Al Washington was a bad defensive line coach. All of that talk, where is it now?
Mm-hmm.
Because every unit has gotten better. The defensive backfield is the only unit that you can say today played below the standard that they've set for the entire season.
Well, that was only a few plays, too. I mean, I think overall they played pretty darn well. I mean,
up until those 2 breakdowns, they had held Drake May to probably about 230 yards passing.
Right. They had him guessing the whole. I mean, from a defensive game plan standpoint, they had Drake May looking like a redshirt freshman. You know what I mean? I mean, he looked great the first 3 games. Now, a lot of that had to do with who they played, but at the same time, he still looked great. Okay. He didn't look so great today, and that a lot of that is credit to the defense and to Al Golden for the defense that he was throwing at Drake May, because he blitzed a lot more tonight than he had, or today, than he has all year, right? I mean, that was clearly by design. He wanted to fluster a young quarterback. Success. He did do that. I mean, his balls, especially in the second half, were just errant. I mean, it was not good quarterback play on his part, but he was getting, harassed and rushed and hit. And he took a lot of hits when he pulled the ball down and started to run with it. I mean, he took some shots. So the defense was harassing him all day, and they made him look like a redshirt freshman. So I thought that was pretty impressive.
Yeah. I personally love, Sean, that, like, for me, this was the first game where I truly felt like the coaching staff and on like a macro level, ask players to do what they're comfortable doing, man, and ask them to be who they are. This was the first game. You just mentioned Marist. Like, this is the first game where I felt like Marist Loifau was just like, brother, like, you're not a traditional stack backer in the sense that, like, you are just a downhill run fill player. But, like, what you can do is you have a background playing in space. What you can do is blitz off the edge. What you can do is delay blitz inside. What you can do is just kind of have a Tasmanian devil type of personality and just run around the field and make plays, right? He's a frustrating player from a former coach, right, Vince? Because it's like he's freelancing a little bit.
Oh,
but
yeah. A lot
that's
of
just
it.
A lot of, that's a good point. But
but no, your point is good, because that's when he's at his best, though, too. Yes. And so as a coach, you kind of have to not necessarily harness it, but just steer it in the right direction, if you will. And I thought that there was a nice balance of that today. He allowed Marist to play kind of freelancing to a degree. I mean, he was rushing the passer. He was coming downhill. He wasn't necessarily having to read anything. I mean, he made some decent reads coming downhill, but yeah, they took the mental side of things out of it for him. I'm not saying he's a dumb football player, but he just plays better when he doesn't have to think, and he can just play on instinct and play downhill. And that's what they asked him to do tonight. And he was impactful to the game. Yeah. And that's all about learning your players. And you expect there to be a little bit of a, learning period. It's Al Golden's first year as DC. It's his first year as the linebackers coach. It's going to take him a little bit to learn his players. He learned Marist. He learned what he does best, I think. And I think we're going to see Marist be more impactful to the defense moving forward if they continue to use him in this manner, right? He's not a sit back and read and then react kind of guy. That's just not who he is.
Yeah, and I mean, they did the same thing too, Sean, with the 3 running backs, right? Like, we've already talked about that a little bit. I know we're going to go more in depth as far as like the defense as a whole, offense as a whole. But again, I felt great knowing that this staff, I mean, we talked about all summer, like Notre Dame has a 3-headed monster. You need to use these guys in a good kind of cohesive way. And through the first 3 games, and, it's due to, Logan Diggs coming back from injury a little bit, but there was also just, I think, a general misunderstanding as far as like how to mix and match them correctly. I feel like they did a great job tonight. Like they got Logan Diggs involved in the passing game. They got Aldrich Estime to kind of be the guy that wears people down a little bit in this game. Chris Tyree did a little bit of everything. Like, they really, for the first part, Brian, like we were just kind of talking, I feel like the coaching staff did a tremendous job of kind of putting players in roles and positions to really accentuate what their strengths really are tonight.
Yeah. It was the thing I liked, guys, they came into this game kind of looking for things they wanted to do. They wanted to attack the flats. They did a lot of different ways, with jets, with slides, with quick outs. I thought they did a nice job of getting Lorenzo Styles in the slot and using him on some quick stuff and getting him in space. And then they had stuff to counter off of it, right? Like, one of the things, I'm not sure if you guys talked about it, but, the first pass play to Logan Diggs, right? You put him in a boom motion and you send him on a wheel route and he gets free for a big gain. Well, then they came back to that later, I think in the same quarter, and he runs that same action pre-snap, and then they just run inside zone right up it. So
and that's when Estime got like 30 yards or something.
29-yard game by Estime. So I mean, they're running with that motion because they're overreacting to what they had done before, and then they hammer it up the middle. So just had a counter for stuff, and it was building on stuff. And this is the thing we've been complaining about for the last couple of weeks is just not seeing enough of that stuff where this is leading to this and this is leading to this.
Sure.
And we started seeing that stuff. They did those slides all game, right? Those quick slides. And so what do they do when they come out in the third quarter? Like you guys were talking about, they do the slide. They bootleg like they're going to do the slide. And they do a throwback to Logan Diggs, and he literally walked into the end zone.
I mean, wide open.
There just was, they attacked the seams and they went deep and they moved the pocket. They just did everything that we have been saying for kind of a while that this team needs to do. And, for me, it was finally, You know, it's like this is what the game plan should have been the first two games.
Agreed.
This is what we should have saw. I mean, this is the kind of game where, you know, if you'd have been doing this earlier in the season, who knows what this team would look like right now. Yeah. You know, taking shots down the field. But I also say, part of the thing is there were things they did today they couldn't have done the first two games because of the way the offensive line played.
Good point.
Yep.
Good point. Because Drew had the last two games, Drew has had ample time in the pocket to go through reads and do some different things. And, you know, he's had time to do that. And, you know, Tyler wasn't getting that kind of time. You know, whatever your opinion of Tyler Buchner is at this point, and everybody's entitled to their opinion, and that's totally fine. But when you have like a second and a half to throw the ball and you're trying to throw deep or you're trying to do some different things, go through reads, it's impossible, right? And you're going to have some inaccuracies. And that was a lot of the problem. Not all of the problem, but that was a lot of the problem. And as you said when we first started the show, Brian, it's a lot easier to call plays when your offensive line is not only giving a great pocket to throw in, but also moving the line of scrimmage so you can have a run game. I mean, that opens up a lot of different possibilities as a play caller. You're not hamstrung to do certain things in certain ways. It just makes so much of a difference, man. I mean, this looks like a different offense, and it starts with the offensive line. No question about it.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, for those people that like to say Drew Pine should have been starting, the fact that the game plan with Drew Pine has always been manage the game and run the ball was not the game plan for Tyler Buchner, which means they thought more of Tyler Buchner than they did of Drew Pine because they thought they could give him more and put more on his shoulders, which probably was the wrong thing to do at this point in the season early on. That's something maybe you get to with him week 7, week 8, when he's developed and shown that he's gotten the grasp of everything and gotten into a flow. But I think we all, look, Drew Pine is doing what we expected him to do, which is to be able to come in and win games with this football team. There's no one here that expected Drew Pine to come in and not be able to get wins.
Right. I mean, look, what did we say before the season? And I really don't want us to turn this into what I don't want the chat to be. I don't want this to turn into a Drew Pine versus Tyler Buchner thing. And that's not what you guys are doing, but I don't want us to respond to what's in the chat anymore about that. Here's what I like about today, guys. 287 passing yards or rushing yards, 289 passing yards. Like, that's the kind of balance that you're looking for. And it was all built around the backs, right? And this is what we kind of talked about coming into the season. You have a bunch of running backs that are capable of beating teams with their legs and beating teams with their in the throwing game. And we saw that today. They're using Chris Tyree as the lead back and then countering off of him with Diggs and Estime. And when the line, I mean, and when you look at Tyree today, for example, in the first half, the line is getting a push, and he's just kind of like waiting back there, waiting, and then bam, hitting that hole. Right. And then there was a couple of times where the offensive line didn't do their job. There was a play where it was like I think it was a 2nd and 4, or I'm trying to think.
Run to the left, and he got the outside outran the linebackers for about 5-6 yards.
Yes, it was a 2nd and 1, right? And it was on the series where Michael Mayer tied the game up. It's a 2nd and 1. You have 3 guys that came free. Tyree puts a quick move and then just outruns them to the sideline to so a -3 turns into a first down, and then Notre Dame goes down and scores a little bit later.
Around the corner,
but when the line's doing its job most of the time, then the backs can be asked to make those plays every now and then. What they were being asked to do the first 2 or 3 games was make that kind of play every single time they were getting the ball. But you got Tyree goes for 15 carries, 80 yards, and then he has 4 catches for 24 yards, grinded out tough yards. Diggs goes for 50 yards on 10 carries. Had a couple runs where I thought he danced a little too much, but then he was bouncing those outside zones late, ran the ball more effectively later. And then he also has 3 catches for 65 yards. Estime has 134 rushing yards. And that's an impressive day's work, fellas. Over 300 total yards of offense, with those backs. And then that made Michael Mayer better.
Yep.
Because now all of a sudden the play action's working, right? And play action works beautifully when you actually can run the football, right?
Hey,
I mean,
Sean and I talked about it in the pregame show, Brian. We were talking about, how is Drew Pine going to be successful in the run game or in the passing game. For him specifically, the play action game was, to me, and my point was the play action game was crucially important for him. That's why they need the run game to work, because if you run play action with no run game, all you're doing is just slowing down the pass game, and that's not going to work out for you. So you need the play action game for him, because I do worry a little bit about. Now, he was very accurate today. I will give him credit.
Oh, yeah.
Overall, I had an accuracy issue with Drew Pine, but the play action gives you bigger windows. It gives you more time, and it allows you to throw the ball deep into bigger windows, because even that one step is crucial when in the passing game, and he got that today.
The thing I like today too, guys, he played with confidence, right? We said during the week, I want to see that strutting, thing with him back, right? And we saw that confident Drew Pine today.
Yeah.
But the other thing I liked is not all the play action was boots and turning his back on the defense. One thing that I do think can hurt a 6-foot quarterback is play actions where they turn their back to the line of scrimmage. Sure. The pass play, the touchdown pass to Styles was an outside zone read, and he gets to keep his eyes right on the safety.
Yeah.
As soon as that guy bites down, he pulls it and throws it over the top for a touchdown. Yeah. Like those are the bootlegs. Those are all like the play action bootlegs on almost every play action today. He got to keep his eyes downfield, and that's going to help him. That's the kind of bootlegs that's going to be good for him. But again, that stuff doesn't work if you're not pushing them around up front, and they absolutely push them around up front. And there were times I thought they went a little too early in the game. I think 3 straight pass plays, right? Two. You kind of count the jet. It's kind of a pass play. By the way, did y'all see that they ran a jet sweep to Michael Mayer today?
It was fantastic.
They were watching the Georgia game from earlier.
Sean, I thought that earlier, man. I was like, they ran a jet to what's his name, 19 from Georgia that everyone loves. Brock Bowers. And I'm like, oh, Notre Dame's like, take this. I mean, his only went for 7 compared to the 75 for Brock. But still, it was a nice little throw.
And Michael Mayer isn't the runner that Bowers is, no doubt about it. But
obviously,
he's
still nice to see.
As of today, though. As of today, he's a better blocker than Bowers. I'll give him credit for today. Now, there were still a few misses in there, but he did step up his game blocking wise today too. So
they even did a touch pass to Lorenzo Styles, which was nice, and got a couple slide routes. I was like, there's a lot of misdirection, a lot of cross action, man. I liked it.
Ryan, that's what we talked. You and I talked about this during the week, and this is an undisciplined defense. Gene Chizik's trying to break a lot of bad habits.
Oh, yeah.
And the one thing that we wanted to see was things that Notre Dame do things that would cause them to kind of be like, wait a minute, where's the ball going? And that's what a lot of what opened up. I mean, the wheel route. And, I mean, guys, geez Louise, not only we talked about the missed opportunity, we need to talk about the fact that he had Michael Mayer wide open up the sideline late in the first half, and he just threw it at his feet, right? He saw him so wide open, he just kind of tried to get it out to him.
He tried to
there was a lot of opportunities today for this team to put up a lot more points. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. I'm saying that as a, man, if they can build on this, that's going to be the key, right? Build on this. Got to build on this. That's and here's the other wild thing. If they didn't take a knee at the end of the game, they'd have had 289 rushing yards and 289 passing yards. So, I mean, it just was a strong all-around performance, and it's hard to be too upset with that, right? And I'll say this, we have been very hard on Josh Lugg, Zeke Correll, and Blake Fisher this year. And I thought that trio today especially was very good. Did you guys see the double team? Let me find it real quick. I'm trying to find the play. There was the only
problem I had, I think Zeke Correll allowed Voracek to come across his face a couple of times and crash a couple of run plays to the right. But other than that, you're right.
There's a couple.
You're right.
But there was also one where
Josh Lugg got stood up on the quarterback sneak.
Guys are going to have some plays where they're not good. But I thought there was one play, and I can't find it in my notes, but there was one particular play, guys, where they ran I thought it was a play to Tyree. I don't see it in my notes, but there was a play where Josh Lugg and Blake Fisher double teamed a guy like 6-7 yards off the ball. And I was like, okay. And they cut right off of it. And I was like, all right, these guys are doing a little something. So,
I thought Blake was much more involved down the field than he has been in the other 3 games. I mean,
this was his best game so far of the year.
Agree. And I want to obviously, it's always the caveat of I want to go back and watch the film, but it appeared that he was involved in a lot of stuff downfield. So that means either he was A, whiffing completely and just running down the field looking for something, or B, moving his guy, and there he was at the point of attack. I'm leaning towards B right now, but again, you want to be able to look at the film, but
it was the 29-yard run to estimate, by the way.
Right
before the touchdown pass to and Pine had a ton of time in the pocket today, which was great.
He did.
Yes.
And even on the play earlier where he scrambled out on converted to 3rd and 12, number one, estimate crushed some dude down the field and just ran some dude over. But the nice thing about that play from an offensive line perspective is they actually gave up a bit of a push on that play. But what do we always say, Vince? You and I have been talking about this for 2 years. Ryan and Sean are someone who no. Stay engaged. Stay engaged.
Yes.
Stay engaged. Keep a body on a body. If you have athletes, all you got to do is keep a body. Like Sean, some of those plays where Zeke Crow got beat across his face, there was a couple of them that I saw but he stayed on the guy and you saw cutbacks off of it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing is keep a body on a body, right? You're not going to dominate every single snap against a Power 5 team, right? Keep a body on a body. And they did a good job keeping a body on a body. And that allowed them offensively to go play. And the receivers did their jobs. The receivers weren't great today. I thought Lorenzo was the best of the bunch. I mean, this is the performance we've been hoping to see more of him. You know, he got open.
He should be, but
got open on that seam route, which was I loved having him in the team on that play. You know, had a couple after the catch plays. They blocked better today than they did last week. And the rest of those guys did their job. Matt Salerno had a nice catch on a 3rd down. It was wide open. Drew went to him late. Jaden Thomas caught a couple slide routes. He struggles big time getting separation on. This is the thing I said in my game observations, and you guys tell me if you agree with this. You may not be able to or not. I don't know what the TV copy showed. The most of the receivers other than Lorenzo had a really tough time getting any separation today on stuff that wasn't scheme designed separation.
Yes.
Meaning the scheme pre-snap movement and the play call got those guys open on little 5-yard out cuts and little slide routes. But other than that, they had a really tough time other than Styles getting separation. Jaden Thomas is a nice guy, nice kid, nice player. He showed today that there's things you can do with him that make him effective. But the reality is they're going to need somebody else to be kind of that go-to guy on the perimeter. And the reality is we'll talk about this more this week, but he was standing on the sidelines the whole game.
That looks like 51 to us.
It does, reverse that one. There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
I would like to point out that Michael Mayer, I was very impressed, and maybe because it was the injury to Bauman, I was very impressed how he led today. And we could see it on the TV, like he was engaged on the sideline with guys. He was engaged with Holden Stays. He was engaged with Eli Raridan. Even when he wasn't catching the ball, he was impactful. You can tell he took it upon himself. He stayed in Drew's ear early on when things didn't go right, because I think Drew was upset that he missed on the sack. I guess if he had seen early and just anticipated Braden going to the post, he would have hit his back foot, let it go right before the safety got to him on the blitz. But he didn't let it go. Eventually took the sack, and he was upset about that. And immediately Michael Mayer went over to him and was like, "It's okay. It's good. Let's go." Yeah. And you love to see that from one of your leaders on the squad. Yeah. Be engaged, lead. He came back. No, he came back to go to a championship, right? And to lose that
so early.
And to still kind of step up and say, you know what? I'm still going to lead. We still have to play. I love seeing that, and I'm sure the scouts love seeing it too. It just shows the true character of the young man. So, look, we always said there's no one that can really defend him. And
he proves that every week.
Dude, the catch that was out of bounds in the end zone.
Sean, that's what I was gonna say, man.
Close to being a touchdown, man.
Can I say something else? This is one thing that I don't think the quarterbacks have done enough of. Even last week against Cal, there was a play where they ran just a 10-yard out cut on third and long, and Mayer was covered. Drew just threw it about 9 feet high, and I'm going to trust my All-American to go up and get it, and he went up and got it. And Sometimes you got to do that. Sometimes you got to make that throw. And the nice thing about today is I think the skill players did things that I think are going to help the quarterback gain confidence as well in himself and them, to where, hey, take that hit. Mm-hmm. Be willing to take that hit. Like, what was the play that drew the crossing route to Mayer for the touchdown? I mean, Drew held that for a minute, right? It was a blown assignment by North Carolina. They had an inside fire, and then the rover or the out safety and the other backer both ran with the swing route. But again, why did that work? Because the swing route's been something they've gone to. Yeah. And then they turned Michael Mayer loose. It was a blown coverage, but he knew he had to kind of let it develop. And he saw a guy barreling down on him, and he held it and got rid of it and took the hit. But when you're throwing 87 and those backs, you're more willing to hold on for those things and wait for those plays to happen. So, guys, overall, offensively, it's a good day.
I was going to say, he took a few hits standing in the pocket. I mean, the touchdown that he threw that none of us that were watching it on TV got to see, but we got to see him take a hit because the camera didn't move. I mean, it was from what I can understand, it was a great throw, and he got hit, and so he's not afraid to stand in the pocket and take a hit. So I do like that about Drew, and he's willing to throw it down the field. He's a willing passer, right? We've had issues with that a lot in the past about being a willing downfield thrower. So far he is a willing downfield thrower, and so that bodes well, I think, for the future of this offense for this year.
Braden Lindsey uncovered on one that he overthrew. I'm telling you, boys, we're going to get one to Braden Lindsey here soon, because there has been so many just misses on deep balls to Braden Lindsey. It's going to happen soon. It's going to happen.
Here's open.
So let's move on to the defense, fellas. We're going to talk about the bad at the end, but on 55 of the 60 plays today, I thought this defense, fellas, was outstanding. I thought this was an extremely well-called game. Al Golden, my biggest fear coming into the game was that they were going to run a pass-oriented defense, and they did not. They ran a defense that allowed them to crash the line of scrimmage, which blew up the run game. The running backs for North Carolina, and I had these North Carolina fans who for the most part this week were really good in our chat and really good on YouTube, posting good comments about what we did. But there's a couple that kind of go, they're getting their two of their backs back. Their running backs combined for 30 yards on 15 carries. This is a team that was averaging over 200 yards a game coming into this game. They dominated the offensive line for North Carolina. Somebody, I forget, I think Sean said it earlier. They didn't ask Maris to do things he couldn't do. He played the flats. Yeah. He rushed off the edge. And when he was playing inside, he crashed.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
He crashed aggressively. J.D. Bertrand comes in on the first play he's in. He has a well-timed Mike fire. Justin Adamiola keeps contained, which forces the quarterback to bounce it out right into his arms, and they strip him and finally get a turnover. I thought he did a great job. And I don't know if you guys could see this on TV, but they did a great job today mixing up coverages, showing zone, playing man, showing man, playing man, showing man, playing zone. They had the blown coverage at the end, which I don't even know if we can talk about because none of us has any clue what the heck they were trying to do on that particular play. But, they trusted their DBs to cover. And outside of 4 plays, and this is the thing that sucks, guys, is if you take those 4 bad plays away, and this secondary covered extremely well today. I mean, Drake May at one point was 8 of 17. He was 12 of 26 at another point because there was nowhere to go with the ball. Mm-hmm. I mean, just nowhere to go. The pass rush was good, but it wasn't great. There just was nowhere to go for the ball. But I thought what they did was when they early in the game, Drake May runs for 33 flipping yards on the first drive, and I'm like, here we go again.
Yeah, so did I.
Same thing we felt at the beginning. Here we go again.
You can't contain with the D-line. What's happening?
But what the interior did is as they adjusted, if the interior did not win with their initial move, they just locked out and stayed right there. And there was nowhere for him to go. And then when he would go vertical, he would have to then make them miss, which by that point in time, it allowed the linebackers to rally to him and limited his runs. Mm-hmm. So I thought they adjusted really well. I thought they completely shut down the run. This is a team that came in. They held North Carolina almost 200 yards below their season average.
Yeah.
And almost 20 points below their season scoring average. Now, I thought the linebackers were better against the run today. They still got issues in coverage. Jack Kaiser had a really rough day in coverage.
He did.
I thought the safeties were pretty good. I thought the corners were pretty good. And I thought the D-line played hard. Is kind of the things I saw. Sean, what did you see from the defense today?
You know what? You pointed out my point because they basically just crushed down on the run game, and you could tell they wanted to make Drake May one-dimensional. And we talked about it early, the coverages and the things they showed him pre-snap, and they made him hold the ball. And it was like, that's what I point to when I said, you asked the biggest question for you week to week. How is Al Golden going to prepare for teams? And I think going from Cal and going to this week, the game plan he had to go up against Drake May was phenomenal. Even when you look at his final stats, I think you had stepped away, and I basically said, look, with about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter when the game was pretty much over, Drake May was sitting at a 50% completion percentage when he's sitting at 70 coming into this game, and he's like 230, 240 yards. And if they don't have the two busted coverages, that's what you get. Like, you almost give the secondary another A this week for what they were able to do. And I am a type of person where Mickey gets beat, and I'm happy with that because I know he'll make that play the more times out of not, and the more experience he gets because he's there. Ben Morrison got in. He was
started.
There. He started.
Again.
He was right there. But this is the key, and I thought this was very interesting. Did you see that they, going to your point, early in the first quarter, they didn't come out with Lacey and Cross. They went to Rubio and Chris Smith? They went to their strong guys in the middle to stop the run early on one of those series early in the game. And I was like, yo, that's interesting. Like, okay. And Rubio had a couple of nice plays and went to the sideline. And I was like, okay, that's really interesting because I never thought Rubio would be in the rotation that early in the game. But obviously, for some reason, they put him in the first quarter to establish something. And I think as the game went on, then you started to see the normal rotation of the interior guys coming into the game. So it goes back to what you pointed out. They clearly had a game plan to shut down the North Carolina run game, make the offense one-dimensional. And what I loved, let me tell you something, man. You watch a kid play within a program for 3 to 4 years, you get to see the ups, you get to see the downs. And what we're seeing from 28 this year, like, you know how his freshman year started off and then how it kind of went left. And for him to be able to regain, get back on track, and become the player that he's become, you love that. You love that for Tariq Bracy. And he is just, man, he's a dog. They had him following Josh Downs everywhere. Josh Downs went outside. He's standing across from him talking to him before the snap. And I'm like, I love it. I love it. Even on the touchdown pass on fourth down, Tariq Bracy was right there. It was just a great play by Josh Downs and a really good throw by Drake May. So you have to love what you're seeing from this team defensively. And they've yet to still play their most complete game as a unit. Like, we've yet to see it. Like, we thought they were on the road to it possibly. And then you get the busted coverages late. But I still think there's more for this defense to grow and do. And I think they're going to continue to get better as the season goes on. I really do.
So I talked about this a little bit earlier, Brian, before you had a chance to jump on, when you had left. And I thought that the game plan defensively was spot on. We're going to pressure this redshirt freshman, and we're going to make him beat us under pressure. And those pressures were able to get home. Those pressures were able to get in his head. And that's what forced him to be the inconsistent passer that he was. You know, they pushed him out of the pocket and they talked about how good he is on the run and all these different things. And we saw that in the first series. I was like, oh crap, it's going to be a long game. Right. But now when those pressures started to get to him and they started to get in his face and he wasn't able to take the time that he has been able to the first 3 games to do what he wanted to do in the past game, and he was forced to be flushed and there were all those different things, I thought they made him look like a redshirt freshman quarterback. And that was a great defensive game plan. And he brought more blitzes today than he has in the first 3 games.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a good call.
And you know what, Vince? I even think I could argue with you semantically about whether or not he actually called a lot of blitzes.
Okay.
Because like how I define a blitz is when, I bring more. To me, a blitz is when you bring more than 5.
Okay.
We didn't see them bring more than 5 today.
He was bringing pressure from various angles.
No. What I'm saying is it's even better. Like I'm saying, like you could even argue if he was blitzing, like he was bringing 5 a lot, and sometimes 4 with like a zone drop.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But like to me, that's sound because you're not exposing your back end to 4 and 5 man coverages.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like you said, Vince, he did a great job of mixing up where that guy came from and how the line worked off of it. We saw some slants and stuff today, but the slants were ETs. So the ends were crashing and the noses were looping out as opposed to kind of the other way around, which can get you in trouble against this offensive line. It's a dangerous thing to twist against this team, but when they did do it, it was in certain personnel groups. Here's some other things he did. I don't know if you guys could see this on TV. They matched personnel with North Carolina the whole game.
Okay.
When North Carolina went 12, they would literally, because now the rule is if you offense substitutes, then the defense substitutes, and they would do things where like they would watch what North Carolina was going to come out in, and then they would send in that personnel group, and then when North Carolina would sub out, they'd sub like a whole different D line. So like when they would go like 12 personnel,
why not?
Yeah, when they would go like 12 personnel, they'd bump Riley, they'd put somebody else in for Justin Amiol and then bump Riley out to the end, and then when they'd go like 11 or 10. They would then bump Riley inside and put Justin in the game at end, or just take Riley out, put somebody else in. They would have like a big man personnel. They would mix up their secondary personnel depending on what they were lined up in. Like their ability to – it was like watching a basketball game, guys.
Yeah.
Like their willingness to match personnel based on what they were doing on defense was really impressive as well. And there was never a time that I saw – that somebody wasn't out there that was supposed to be out there. There was a couple times where like they would go somebody in and there'd be somebody standing there and they would like make a quick change and that guy would come in, but it was never like, oh shoot, I'm not supposed to be in here. Or, oh, I thought I was supposed to be in here. And the communication was great. Like there was one time they North Carolina lined up with 4 guys to the left, which meant the tackle was eligible. Yeah. Jaden Mickey walks up to Maris Lewfound, points at the offensive tackle, and you could tell he was saying, he's eligible. He's eligible. He turns – this is a freshman. Turns around to the safety and is like, he's eligible. You could see it. You could see him doing it. I don't know if you guys could see it in the game, but like from the press box, you could see it. And then they shifted out of it, right? So it ended up not being that way. But like it just they were so confident in what they were doing, and it just looked like they were doing a lot personnel and doing a lot structurally, but schematically, they were just playing fast.
Yeah.
And I think it's twofold. One is it does look to me like they scaled back a little bit. But the other part of it is I thought that they're starting to figure out what coach wants. And they're going to do that. It's just like with the offensive line.
Right.
Harry Heastand didn't change anything the last 2 weeks. It's just they're now taking the stuff that you 3 all saw them do in practice, go the other way, and they're now applying it.
Right.
From the practice field to the game field. And I think we saw that a little bit today on the defense as well. I think they're starting to figure it out a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that both sides were pretty crisp too, Brian. Like someone just said, like, I know we're talking defense more now, but offensive side of the football, I think there was only 1 false start penalty. There wasn't really many penalties with Notre Dame, right? No turnovers. They didn't really shoot themselves in the foot. Not a ton of missed tackles. Like we talked all week about Notre Dame's playing a pretty talented football team in general, right? So let's not also play against Notre Dame on Saturday, right? Like let's keep it clean. And I thought for the most part, both sides of the ball defensively, aside from a couple of miscommunications coverage-wise, like I felt like the game was pretty clean all the way around in that regard.
Compared to last week, it was extremely clean. Like we didn't, there weren't the drive-killing penalties that it felt like they just kept having over and over last week. Now, granted, that's a feeling. It just felt like that just kept happening last week over and over. Didn't happen this week. So that's coaching. Like they coached that out of them a little bit. You know what I mean? Like the players understood, man, we can't have that. You know, I'm not saying that they were committing penalties on purpose last week or anything like that, but those moments became highlighted, and it's like, hey, we can't have false starts on 3rd and 2. You know what I mean? And that didn't happen today. And I thought that was a huge step in the right direction. That it shows that they're being coached on the right things. I do believe that. And I think you're going to see that more and more moving forward. There was the one false start, I think, today. And that was
there's a couple like holding penalties on the, from pass interference perspectives and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, Vince, like I just, again, man, like I thought that Notre Dame didn't shoot themselves in the foot. I think if anything, you saw today, North Carolina had a ton of penalties. North Carolina was fighting with each other. Like they were the ones that were fighting against themselves today, which was different because I felt like Notre Dame over the first couple games, especially, they were fighting against themselves. I mean, it's a really cliche thing to say, like, the only team today that can beat you is yourself, but it was that way over the last couple games with Notre Dame, right? It's like you kept Cal in the football game. You had a terrible game against Marshall because you just kept shooting yourself in the foot. Like I just felt like that was kind of a recurring theme. And in this game, I felt like Notre Dame didn't do anything to really hurt themselves. Like they just played a pretty clean football game in that regard.
No, I agree.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They played so bad against Marshall and had a lead with 7 minutes. Like they had the lead in the fourth quarter as bad as they played, which goes again to this team might not have been as good as we thought they could have been coming out. But if they continue to get better, they could end up being, because I think at this point, college football has kind of casted them to the side.
Oh.
Like after the Marshall game, like, okay, we're not worried about Notre Dame. At this point, they could get to November, and that Clemson game could be really interesting because they'll be peaking at the right time, and who knows what will be happening with Clemson. So it's just going to be it might turn out to be one of the most enjoyable or a very enjoyable season for fans, even though it started the way it started. So,
and I think that, look, Notre Dame has multiple opportunities left on this schedule to make a statement, right? I mean, yes, losing to Marshall is unforgivable, but then you're not going to get any argument from me on that. You're not. Yep. But they have opportunities because now the only good thing about losing to Marshall is that it was the second game of the season, the second week of September, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have time and you have marquee games on your schedule where you can change the narrative a little bit, right? I mean, starting with BYU, because BYU is still going to be a ranked team when Notre Dame plays them unless they completely stub their toe over the next couple of weeks. Right. So you got BYU, then you've got Clemson at home, then you got USC on the road. Those are 3 marquee games that everybody's going to be watching and everybody's going to be paying attention, right? And they're all in prime time, most likely, right? BYU game's at night. We already know that the Clemson game is at night. And if Notre Dame wins all of their games leading up to USC, that game's going to be at night. So all 3 of those games are going to be in prime time, right? Now, they got a ton of work to do before we get to that point. I'm not saying that they're ready to do that. But what I am saying is they're going to have opportunities to somewhat change the narrative moving forward. What?
I step out for 3 minutes and y'all are talking about Clemson.
Well,
that was Vince.
We just
in the context of getting to that game and how good Notre Dame can be.
But can't we just enjoy this for 5 minutes?
I'm enjoying it. Believe me, I'm enjoying it. But I'm just saying they've got opportunities to change the narrative moving forward.
Yeah, because they're going to get better week by week. And that's what they've done since March.
They need to. They need to. Yes. Thing. And we, like you said, Sean, they've done that the last 2 games. Right. My only thing is I hope that the way they finished doesn't like kind of fester, but I almost feel like the bye week is good for that because there's going to be time to get in the film room and be like, guys, we did a lot of good stuff, man. We did a lot of good stuff. And that's the frustration I have with some of the people, some of the complaints I'm seeing on defense. And did you guys talk about the bad stuff that we saw on defense?
Not yet.
So like, to me, like there was stuff that just like, man, you can't make those plays, right? Like you can't allow those plays to happen. Like, a couple of them were just good balls. Like the ball Cam Hart got beat on. Cam's got to play that a little bit better. It was a heck of a ball, and you can't lose contain. The ball to Jaden Mickey. Jaden played it bad, but it was also a really good throw.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other ones were just like, what are you doing? Right? Clarence, like what are you doing right there? And then the other thing is when you're up that much, why are you playing man-to-man with no safety help on a go route? You're up 38-14. Like that. There was a couple things like that. But it's like if you're going to focus on those 5 plays and not but here's the thing: 4 completions for 215 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they only had 367 yards of offense, guys. They were at like 245 through 3 quarters. Like that included an 80-yard touchdown pass. That 245 included an 80-yard touchdown. Are those plays okay? No, they're not. They got to get fixed.
Yeah.
But we saw some really good stuff today from the defense guys. Yeah. And we saw them improve on things that had been a struggle in the past. Well, really the past 3 games, really. And that's an encouraging thing. Clean some stuff up. And they didn't have Ramon Henderson today.
No.
Right. He didn't play because of an ankle injury.
No, they called a penalty on point.
Yeah, I know, right? And then they called a penalty on poor Chance Tucker got called for a penalty today.
Yeah, it was on Tariq, right?
Yeah, it was on Brandon Joseph. They ended up flipping it to 16. Yeah. I thought it should have been on Tariq, but they ended up switching it to.
Yeah, I thought it was Tariq because Tariq was mugging his guy, for being honest.
Yeah,
but
I thought so too.
Right. I think they just flipped it to the next, like, oh, no, it wasn't 18. Instead of flipping it to 28, 16 was closer. I was like,
Chance has more penalties than snaps played.
I know, right? Seriously, how does that even happen? But in all seriousness, like as a coach, there's things, guys, you look at and say, fellas, this has got to get better. We got to do a better job here.
No doubt.
But I would much rather be in a situation where I'm trying to clean that stuff up while watching the other 55 plays of dominance in this game.
Absolutely.
And that's the key for me. And like, look, there was a couple times where, North Carolina had, I'm looking at it here, North Carolina had 7 possessions in the first half. They scored on 2 of them. And that allowed the offense to do what they needed to do to get the win. I mean, they stopped them, held them on the end zone on 5 of their first 7 possessions. Yeah. Actually, it's actually more than that because going into the second half, North Carolina didn't score, fumble, punt. Yeah, it wasn't until their 3rd possession. So they stopped them on 7 of their first 9 possessions. North Carolina failed to score for a team scoring 50 points a game coming into this game, right? Like that's pretty good. And by the time they started making those mistakes, it was 38-14.
Yeah.
You know who was bored tonight was John Sott. He had a 50-something yarder, but he only punted one time tonight.
Well, dude, if you're only going to get in once, you better kick the mess out of it.
And he did. And he did.
So do you guys want to talk a little special teams before we go to the super chats?
They almost blocked a couple of punts today, didn't they?
Sean, they didn't look super close from the booth, but I mean we were sometimes at a weird angle. But I love that they were rushing them. They were close enough, Sean, where the punter got a little nervous.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's why he was rushing some. He was definitely rushing some of those. There's no doubt about that.
Can I just say, it is very refreshing, by the way, to have a punt returner who is, I shouldn't say a punt returner that's willing, having a coach that is willing to allow punt returns to happen, number one. And I thought Brandon Joseph did a great job making the first 1 or 2 guys miss, gaining some yardage, making some plays. Like you said earlier, Brian, calling plays from the 15 is a lot different than calling plays from the 30, right? And he was consistently getting 10-ish yards a return, which was fantastic. And it's so funny because somebody in the chat was like, we need somebody else back there returning punts. I'm like, we just got a guy to return punts.
Somebody seriously said, what was the reasoning for that?
They didn't want Chris Tyree returning punts. That's what
somebody
said earlier in the chat.
Somebody on the board also said, like, oh, is it just me or Brandon Joseph looks slow? I'm like, guys, what are we just?
What are we watching? He's doing a great job at returning punts. I'm telling you.
Did I see Brian, you were there, but I could have sworn I saw Joe Wilkins back for a kick return.
I honestly don't think I didn't see that, but during the kick returns, because their kicker was going to give Notre Dame zero chance to return, so I was making notes during the kick return. Like I had watched, but coming into the game, like it was like, yeah, they're not going to have any.
No, I saw Tyree, and he kicked one through the end zone, and then Tyree's running to the sideline, and then like parallel to him, I see number 5 running, and I'm like, wait a minute. Did they have Joe Wilkins back on kick return? I was like, I'll have to make sure I ask Brian this because
I did not see that. Yeah, they've only given up a team giving up 37 points a game has only given up 4 kick returns all year. So I knew they weren't going to give Chris Tyree a chance. So I honestly wasn't paying attention.
I wouldn't either.
Sorry,
I would get so far away from Chris Tyree.
Sorry about that.
But hey, it is.
But yeah, I love the aggressiveness of the punt coverage, which allowed them. I mean, because part of it is, Brandon is purposely running slow to let some of the blocking develop and find out once I make this guy miss, where am I going?
Right. And that's important to understand too, because returning a punt is 1,000 times different than returning a kick, right?
Right.
A kick return, you get that ball and you go. You get to full speed and you go. Maybe it's a one cut and you go. Punt return, you've got to set up those blocks. First, you got to make the first guy miss. Then you start setting up blocks and you kind of maneuver your way through, and then you hit your next gear once you get to that next level. It's a completely different scenario returning both of those. I mean, it's just a whole different philosophy.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, obviously missed field goal. I did not like, guys, I'll be honest with you. I didn't like
him kicking it there at all.
I didn't like the play calling on that drive, to be honest with you. That was one of Drew's mistakes of the game. They were empty, and they brought a linebacker fire from the second level, and Drew's got to see that throw off of it. That's on the quarterback. That's not a protection mistake in my opinion. Somebody's got to throw hot. He's got to know who you're throwing hot off of.
Sure.
And that's kind of where that happened, right? And then that put him in a tough spot, and then they try to throw a post route to Jaden Thomas. I don't understand why your first deep shot is to
who's triple covered.
Jaden Thomas does some nice things, but running post routes over top of the defense is not one of them. I did like the third down call, though. I'm not going to lie to you. Like 3rd and 17, it's like, you could maybe take a shot, but if you don't get yards, you're not in field goal range. They ran. Right. So I was like, why is Davis Sherwood in the game on 3rd and 17? But you know what they did with him? They just had him run right down the field, and as soon as Chris Tyree caught that ball, he just started blocking people, they were just trying to get it. I mean, and they came close to getting the first down, but they were just
14 yards. Yeah,
get Chris in space, because one of 2 things is going to happen. Either A, he's going to break it for a first down, or B, it's going to get some field goal range, and they got him in field goal range, and I mean, it was a makeable distance.
Oh, he should have made it. I mean, he missed it by this much. He
didn't hit it. He didn't hit it well, Vince. Like, the ones we talked about last week where, it could have been better for deeper. It just came off funky. Like he didn't get it. I don't know if the hold wasn't good, but he just didn't get a good piece of it. It just, you knew it wasn't going to be, because as soon as he kicked this, that's my desk. I think he missed that. Like, it just didn't come off of his foot right. Now, keep in mind, I'm in the press box looking at it from sideways. I can't tell the angle. You could just tell the way it came off of his foot. Sure. Other than that, I thought the special teams today, fellas, was really good.
I love this chat, because someone wants us to talk about how every Blake group he misses to the right. I'm like, the whole one this season. So
he did miss one last week too.
Yeah, sure.
But I thought that was to the left.
I thought it was too. Yeah, I could be wrong.
It was from the left hash. It was from a left hash, and he missed it to the right.
Oh, he did.
No, you're right. He missed it left. You're right.
Yeah, it's from the left, and he missed it left. Yeah.
You're right.
So, can somebody just put this in the chat too? Can I say one other thing? I had somebody earlier in the game saying, or somebody had mentioned to me during the game that they did not like the fourth down call by both of the 4th down calls by Marcus Freeman. I actually thought that was one of my favorite aspects of today. Now, again, they didn't I didn't like the play call on 4th down, but I did like. And look, guys, I believe in you, right? And they didn't get it, but then they got another 4th and goal, and instead of trying to kick a field goal, they went for it. And at first, I didn't think the pass interference on Tyree was a good call, because from where I was, but when they showed the replay, I saw the guy grab his hip. But I love that play call too, because they used Mayer to get the emphasis of the defense, and they were just going to come right back to Tyree. That looked like where they wanted to go. and he beat the guy, and the guy grabbed his hip and pulled him back, and it wasn't a great throw, but he got the throw out and they got a pass interference. But I mean, that's what you do, right? If you don't run a play, you've got no chance there. But it showed me confidence. The head coach showing confidence in his offense, which I think they need. Like, well, we screwed up that fourth down. Well, coach gave us another shot, and it panned out. But I liked that very much.
I thought that was a problem with. Go ahead, Vince. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to kind of piggyback off of that, I was really excited because they had the camera on Marcus Freeman during after that third down before the missed field goal, and he clearly says first he goes like this. He takes the punt team and he pushes them back onto the sideline. He says, "We're going for it," and then he calls timeout, and they end up kicking the field goal. I realize hindsight is 2020. They missed the field goal, whatever. I really wanted him to. I felt like they had momentum. I really wanted him to go for it there on fourth down. That's my only kind of gripe about that kind of a play call. I wanted him to go for it there. Now, if they were just going to sneak it, that would have been not good. But at the same time, I kind of want. I love the moxie there, man. He's like, "Hey, no, we're going for it." Like, I was excited. Then they call timeout and they kick a field goal and miss. But I would have loved to see them go for it there.
Yeah. So, guys, overall, sloppy performance at times that can be cleaned up, but yet still a very convincing win. And if you're not happy about this win, I would think that you need to take a deep breath and realize there's a lot more important things in life right now than you being upset with only beating North Carolina by 13 in a game that was not really competitive for most of the game.
Yeah.
So, like I said earlier, guys, it was a game that I think that as a coach you love, because there's a lot of stuff to clean up, but also a lot you can point to say, hey, when you do it the way that I ask you to do it, and you do it hard and you do it fast, fellas, this is what it looks like. Right. There was, hey, Harry Heastan, fellas, when you do what I ask you to do, this is what we do, right? Because, again, this was not a very good defense, guys, but they destroyed a not very good defense and left at least 17 points out there to be had.
Right.
There's at least another 17 points out there to be had. And that's what I like as a coach. A lot to point to say, build on this.
Yes.
And then still enough to say, but man, if we clean this up, boy, guys, imagine how good we can be if we don't do this, if we don't do that.
Right.
And, I just thought this was the closest thing we've seen so far this year to a complete performance. If you can just take away the last 5 flipping minutes of the game. When it was not in question. The game was not in question when those things happened. Those last 2 big plays happened. Even the last 3 big plays. The game was over.
I was never worried.
But that's the thing. You want to stay locked in, right? Stay locked in when the game is over, right? Yeah. I mean, it's no excuse to give up a 4th and 21. I don't care if you're up by 70, but it's, you learn from it, right? You learn from it. And, Drew Pine looked good. Backfield. Because what did we say for the year, right? Vince, you and I talked about this. Ryan, you and I talked about this. Sean, you and I think we may not have talked about it on the show, but we definitely have talked about it between you and I. Drew Pine's a good enough quarterback to beat at least 10 of the teams on your schedule.
Absolutely.
Right? And today was an example of why we thought that.
Yep.
Right? We finally saw the Drew that we saw last year, but more accurate.
Yes.
Why? Because he had a ton more reps during the week of practice than he did last year when he's coming off the bench. So, and he also showed here's the thing that's important for me, the big takeaway today, fellas. Notre Dame showed today, if you try to load the box, number one, it may not work because we may still run it on you anyway, which they did today.
True.
And the other thing is we will throw it over your head. Now, some of them didn't hit. Some of them did.
You have to have the threat. You have to have the threat.
And they showed that today.
Yeah, agreed.
They showed that today. I'm very pleased with what I saw today.
Yeah.
Very pleased with what I saw today.
All encompassing, Notre Dame needed this. Like, they needed this type of win, right? Like, not only they need a victory, because you got one last week, but it wasn't a pretty victory. They needed this type of performance. Struggling, going into a bye week, just had a decommitment from the recruiting side of things. Notre Dame needed this one, and they pulled it out. So it's good night. It's good night.
Yep.
You felt like they had a chance to extend to double digits against Cal a couple of times to get some breathing room and kind of seal that thing a little bit earlier than they did. Then they get the opportunity against North Carolina and they do it. So now you build on that. And now you make it a complete game. Like Brian, you talked about, stay focused and dominate. Like Oregon physically dominated BYU. You should be able to come out and physically move BYU, run the ball, make plays, and once again force another quarterback to become a one-dimensional player, which is he has to go around, make great throws, and make plays with his legs in order to win games because you're not going to be able to run the ball. If they can give up 60 to 80 yards on the ground as a defense with the defensive backfield that they have, you're going to have some pretty good results. Like, we understand the linebacker play at this point is what it is until we see some other guys come into the rotation, like a Prince Collie. But like you said, and we talked about it, the way they decided to use Maris today is going to make him even better. It's going to make him an even more confident player as the season goes on. And it's going to bode well for this team moving forward. I felt like everything is about Notre Dame now. It's not even about who they play. It's about them and the execution they come out with each and every week. And if they play at this level over the next 2 months, they should be pretty good. They should be fine. And they'll get better.
Can I ask you guys can I make a comment and ask you guys for your opinion on this comment?
Yeah.
Today was a incredibly convincing victory for Notre Dame. And we saw a lot of good things. I don't think this was close to as good as this team can be. No. Execution-wise, the line can still get better. The execution can still get better. There's still personnel changes that have to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Defensively, there's stuff to clean up. This team looked really good today. If we were talking during the week, boy, if this team plays, like somebody made a post on the board and it was a fair post. If Notre Dame plays the rest of the year the way that they have played, here's the results of the season: lost today, toss up against BYU, beat UNLV and Stanford, beat Navy, beat BC, but potentially lose every other game. And it was a very fair comment based on what they had done the first 3 weeks.
Sure.
If this team plays this way the rest of the way, like you said, Sean, they're going to win a lot of games. They're not going to win all of them.
No.
My thing, though, is I think there's a lot more that this team is capable of, which is really an encouraging thing for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They need to keep progressing. And I think we saw progression from week 2 to week 3, and we saw progression from week 3 to week 4. And I think if we continue to see the progression in whatever increments that it happens to be, and whatever position group it happens to be, right? As long as the progression continues, I think that's going to be the most important part, and they will be competitive in every game moving forward. They may not win them all, but they're going to be competitive in every game, and they're going to have opportunities to be competitive in every game. They just have to continue to get better. They have to. So if they're this exact team for the rest of the year, they'll win a bunch of games, but they're also going to lose a few, right? They need to incrementally get better. And I think this bye week is going to be huge. There's a lot of things they can do over this bye week that I think can really help them moving forward. I'll leave it at that for right now because I'm sure we'll have a show about it or something over the next 2 weeks. But there are definitely things they can do over the bye week to make them better, whether it's rotationally, whether it's getting certain guys in or taking certain guys out or whatever the case may be. Sean and I talked about this morning in the pregame show. The first half of the bye week, so the first week of the bye week is all about self-scouting. It's about getting your team right? It's about, whatever that means to your team during the bye week. This is a great opportunity for Notre Dame. They're 2-2. They're obviously going to hit the recruiting trail at some point. Marcus Freeman already said they're not going to get days off. It's just going to be, hey, we're going to work and we're going to get this thing right. That's awesome. And again, going into the bye week, having a W coming off of that is great. So they're going to have an opportunity now to self-scout over the next week. And then the following week is going to be BYU prep, right?
Yeah.
This week is so key, starting tomorrow on Sunday, for their self-scout. It's so important.
And this team that has a first year coaching staff, right? Like you need that, right? Like they need to have constant self-evaluation, right? So I think that's a great point, Sean. Sorry, Vince. Sorry, Vince. Didn't mean to cut you off, Sean. Sorry.
No, but it's like I'm looking at Dylan McCullough's, tweet. 3 running backs over 100 total yards.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, I didn't even realize that. That's what they had today. Mm-hmm. Right? And then you have 2 true freshmen getting big time reps. I keep telling people that, in spite of where things sit now, the future is bright. And, you want to see how bright it is, then, I'm sure you'll catch Vince and Ryan tomorrow. Vince and Brian tomorrow, they'll have the film work, and it'll probably look even better. Like we're talking about the offensive line. After you watch this film, you guys will probably feel even better about it, right?
Let's hope. Let's not jump to conclusions, Sean.
What I'm saying is, what they're going to say is, in my opinion, without looking at it, I think you're going to see some things, but you're going to see, if we clean this up.
Yeah.
Well, didn't you say that last week?
Right.
And some of the things you asked to be cleaned up, they cleaned up. So now you're saying, okay, now if we clean these things up, how good can they be? And hopefully they continue that trend of getting better and cleaning things up on a week-by-week basis. It's just a lot like I said, it feels much better than 2 weeks ago this time. I can tell you that. Right? As much as everyone is like, hey, it was North Carolina and Cal. They really didn't beat anybody.
Yep.
Well, hey, I would much rather be 2-2 going into the bye than 1-3.
Cal just dominated Arizona. They blew them out. So, I mean, it's a conference opponent, right? So
Did you see Jade Knott's stat line, Vince? At one point, he had 17 carries for 201 yards. I think he ended up almost 300 yards rushing against Arizona. Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
So all I know is I'm looking at these Ohio State receivers running rampant tonight.
I turned that one off quick because that was not competitive from the kickoff.
It was 21-0 in the first quarter, man.
That was a non-competitive football game from the kickoff. So Arkansas, it's 21-23. A&M lead.
They recovered nicely. They recovered nicely. The Aggies were threatening to go up by 2 touchdowns, but they kept it close. What do you guys think about overall what you've seen from the sideline mannerisms of Marcus Freeman? Have you seen growth? I thought strategically, I think you brought it up, Vince, like 2 times he forced Mac Brown and his staff to react by keeping the offense out there on 4th down.
Yeah. Absolutely.
He forced them to use a timeout one time because he had sent the offense out there and they weren't prepared for it. So those are little things that you see him picking up as a head coach and just working on little things and time management. I think it was at the end of the first half, they were in the red zone and he was conscious of scoring, but not wanting to leave North Carolina too much time. And you can see him looking at the clock. So I really like seeing those type of things and him paying attention to the small things within a game.
I agree. I think his visible confidence has gotten a lot better, whether he was confident before or not. Yeah. I don't know what's inside his head, but from a visual standpoint, I was very impressed with the way he looked today. Like he was more in control of the sidelines, I felt like, today. And again, the camera's not on him all the time, but when it was, he was clearly the one making the shot. He was calling the shots. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that was good to see. So from that aspect, look, and he's growing every week, just like the team and all of that. But I felt like he was in control from a communication standpoint and the whole deal. So I did like that.
And I think it's something interesting too that I feel like we didn't spend enough time on just this past offseason, and the fact of like, hey, it's a new coaching staff. We know this, right? It's a young team in certain spots, offensively especially. But Marcus Freeman's also growing each week, right? Like that's the exponential growth that we keep talking about, right? Like I don't think anyone should have expected that Marcus Freeman would be a finished product in week 1 against Ohio State. Would have been great if it was a better result. Sure. Would have been better if you beat Marshall. Absolutely. That's an inexcusable loss. We talked about that in nauseum. But the point is that Marcus Freeman in game 4 was much better than Marcus Freeman in game 1, was much better than Marcus Freeman in game 2, was much better than Marcus Freeman in game 3. He is getting better and better as the lead man up top, in my opinion.
Agreed. And that bodes well. That bodes well for the entire program.
No doubt. You guys ready to jump into some super chats here?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I'll pull them up. If we get any more, you guys just want to star them and throw them in, and we'll kind of go over in that direction. All right.
Yep.
All right. First up, Ian Johnson. Thanks so much for the super chat. Did good except for one thing: play your freaking freshmen, and 2 when you're up 3 scores in the 4th. I think, from my standpoint, I think I said this to Brian at one point. I was like, okay, we're about ready for the 2s, and he goes, it all depends on what happens with this drive with North Carolina. And then they went down and scored. If they didn't score and they get the ball back, I think the 2s were in. But they let North Carolina score, and so you got to get ones in. So I'm sure that they were planning on it, but you can't do it when it's a 2-score game.
Yeah,
agreed. You know what? Again, Vince, like this is off of not watching the film, and we'll have like more in depth on this tomorrow and into the week. But again, Eli Raritan looks like a blocker, man. Like, where does this come from, man? Because I agree. Like, we need to see Tobias Merriweather. It would have been nice to see maybe a Steve Angeli at the end if the game was kind of just, settled and just you knew it was way over, right? But Eli Raritan, man, and just off a broadcast, he's their best blocker easily. Like, I don't even think it's close at the tight end position. It is bananas, man. Bananas.
Look, I love Kevin Bauman, and I'm very sad to see that his season is over for him as a young man and as a football player. But it's kind of a blessing in disguise for the rest of these tight ends, because now you're going to be able to see some different guys get in. I hate that an injury made that happen, because I felt like it probably should have happened this week regardless. But I think these young guys are going to start getting some playing time, and I think they're going to be better for it.
Amen to that. I can second that.
Yeah, next up, Robert Jarowski. Thank you very much for the super chat. Great win. Proud of Drew Pine, even though he spelled it wrong. That's okay. Pine with a Y, like Ryan with a Y. I don't want to mess that up.
Have we talked about what Drew Pine's quarterback rating is since Tommy Rees told him to do his effing job on national television and everybody lost some sensitive people lost their minds about it?
I would love to hear it, Brian. I would love to hear it.
I mean, it's pretty unreal. I mean, he went 10-11 the second half, and he threw a touchdown pass to Chris Tyree after that. I'm pretty sure it's really flipping good. And today he went 24 of 34 for 289 yards. I'm just saying. And we also saw today, I didn't talk about this, but we also saw what Ryan, you and I talked about. Drew Pine is he's not a guy that's going to scare you with his legs, but he is a chain mover with his legs.
Yeah.
And we saw that today. We saw that in the quarterback keep where North Carolina was crashing the backside and they just pulled it and he ran out for a touch, ran out. And
he had like one where he extended it. It was like 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 or something like that. It was I forget what drive it was, but he kind of moved up into the pocket, scrambled right. And it was kind of a longer 3rd down play. I think it was like a 3rd and 8 and scrambled for the first down. So
it was 3rd and 12, I thought, wasn't it?
Was it 3rd and 12? Wow.
Was that the one where Audric Estime just
yes, you're right. It was even
should have been arrested for felonious assault.
Yes.
On that particular, he just crushed some dude.
Yep.
No, you're right, Ryan. It was 3rd and 9. It was 3rd and 9. You're right. He ran for 12. I knew there was a 12 in there somewhere.
That makes more sense.
But but Audric, that was the point. Is he did a great job of extending that play. This is what you call a great team play. That was the one, Sean, we were talking about earlier. They kept a body on a body, and even though they kind of gave up the pocket closed, they kept the body on a body, which allowed him to do that really weird, ugly spin move. But then he got out of the pocket. And then he's running, and if Audric doesn't turn around Audric was about 3 yards behind the first down marker and then drove the guy about 3 yards past the first down marker and planted him on his backside. And then Drew ran right outside of that block. I mean, that's what we haven't seen, right? The whole do your job thing, like the line did their job, Drew did their job, the receivers didn't do their job because they didn't get open. And then Audric turned around and did his job.
Yeah.
And it moved the chains. And I believe on that particular drive, that is the play that led to their game-tying touchdown. They're down 7-0 there, fellas.
Right.
It's 3rd and 9. The offense has gone 3 and out, and they're about to go 3 and out again.
Right.
And then that happens. And then they were a different offense after that.
Absolutely. Because then they went on like 4 consecutive offensive
The
drives.
very next play was the wheel route to Audric Estime or Logan Diggs for 39. and then Chris Tyree ran a stretch for 9. That got him to 2nd and 1. Then the very next play after that, Tyree gets 3 guys in his face. He outruns him to 2nd and 1. The very next play, Tyree, the defensive end slants in, and Tyree and Blake Fisher, it was an inside zone, and the guy crosses Blake Fisher's face, and he just turns him inside, and Tyree bounces it, runs for 10 yards. And then the very next play, Drew saw the blitz, blown coverage, throws it to Mayer, who runs in for 10 yards. You think North Carolina might have figured out they needed to cover 87 because apparently they didn't get the memo.
Even when they covered him, he was able to make plays. I mean,
but my point is, Ryan, to what you were saying, that play changed this. And then the next drive, it was a shovel pass to Mayer, 29-yard run by Estime, and then a 30-yard touch. That was a completely different team after that play.
Yep,
completely different team. It went from 3 and out. I'm sorry. The second one was a 3 and out. That was the defense. They went 3 and out, missed a field goal, and then they had that. They're about to go 3 and out again.
Mm-hmm. Instead, they score on 4 consecutive drives or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Can I say this? Gene Chizik has a long road ahead of him, fellas.
Yes,
long,
he does.
Long road.
Yes, he does.
Oh, yes. Yes. All right, next up is Sean Hartman. Thank you very much for the super chat, Sean. Glad to see the wide receivers getting more involved in making plays. Running backs and Mayer played great, but yards from the wide receivers are a good sign. Wide receiver singularly, and I mean, Thomas had some yards. He did have some yards.
Look, no. I'm not going to bang on Jaden Thomas because he's being put in some positions he shouldn't be put in. That's not on Jaden Thomas. When he was put in situations that fit his game, he stepped up and made plays. He blocked better today. He had some chain moving plays today. Like, I don't want to turn this into what we kind of did to Kane Madden last year. Kid's trying his best. You put him into situations that he should have been put into.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the thing is when they put him in position today to do what he's capable of doing, then he made plays. Right. Yeah. Same thing with Matt Salerno. I have no beef with Matt Salerno. Sean has no beef with Matt Salerno. Vince, Ryan, we have no beef with Matt Salerno. He's a nice kid, works hard. There's a role for him.
Yes, sir.
It's he shouldn't be doing that when you've got 15 standing on the sidelines. Correct. Right. That's the point. And I don't want to. When Jaden Thomas was put in, you can't ask a kid to do something he's not capable of doing. That's not on the kid. That's not on the kid. Actually, when Jaden was put in position today to make plays, when Matt Salerno was put in positions that he can make plays, he made plays. Right.
When being part of that bunch formation on the goal line, I had no problem with Matt Salerno being in there because he was a check down guy. And nobody was covering him.
I'd still have a problem with it because I would have rather seen somebody that maybe could have made a guy missing in the end zone. But the point is, he did his job, right?
Yep.
And that's my thing. I don't want us to start banging on. I mean, Jaden shouldn't be in there in certain situations. Simple as that. That's not banging on him. But he did his job the best of his ability. Salerno did his job the best of their ability. They're just not playmakers.
Right.
Well, and they're asking them to be playmakers. That's true. So sorry, I just needed to interject.
Jaden Thomas back that was in that one practice that we saw. He was unbelievable that day. All right. Jim, thanks for the super chat. Celebrate IB Nation. Fundamentally, we looked a lot more sound, except for a few busts defensively and wide receivers. What say all of you? Go Irish, go IB. I think we've hit, all of those points up to this point.
Yes, good observations, Jim.
But,
very good.
Thank you, Jim. Much appreciated. Tyler is up next. Thank you for the super chat. This win feels like it saved your season and love the 24 points in the second quarter. Could not agree more with that. 24 in the second quarter was fantastic. I mean, they were it's a lot of consecutive drives, scoring touchdowns, which was fantastic, which was great at Warfield.
They tied their season high in points in a quarter tonight. So that's
so sad about the past.
Yeah. Let's be more specific about that. They tied their season high for points in a game with their second quarter output today.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Woof. Yep. But hey, great for today, not great for before. So I mean, it is what it is.
We don't live in the past. We live in the future, Vince.
That's right.
And the present here also.
Yeah, Spanky hits us with a super chat. I'm not going to let Tommy off the hook totally, but I think we all know it's much easier to call a game when your O-line is playing that well.
I mean, look, we're not letting off Tommy off the hook because you can't change what happened the first two games. I mean, this doesn't erase that. that was a mistake. However, I'm not going to keep living in the past. What did he do today? This is a post-game show about Notre Dame, North Carolina, not a review of the first 4 weeks of the season. Right. Have a different story then. Today it was excellent.
Yeah.
He called a game that his players can execute for the most part. Mm-hmm. And they did. And he leaned on his offensive. Look, he's been trying to lean on his offensive line all year. I didn't like how he went about doing it the first couple of games. He's been trying to lean on them the whole year, and they weren't playing to the level that allowed him to lean on them.
Right.
Today they did impressively.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully it's the beginning of a breakout. So reminded me a lot of the Wake Forest game in 2018, guys. You remember that? Remember how bad Ryan? You and I talked about this yesterday. Remember how bad the offense was the first 3 games of the year? 24 points against Michigan, 24 against Ball State, 22 against Vanderbilt. None of those teams were any good. And then they made a change to Ian Book for Wake Forest, and they just went down to North Carolina and throttled Wake Forest. The offense just went rolling, and then the offense just rolled after that. I mean, the offense was pretty good after that with a little blip against Pitt in the first half. But, I'm hoping that can this can be a similar springboard to that.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that team didn't take 2 losses before it got to that point, but that team also didn't play, Ohio State and Marshall. I mean, with all due respect, Ball State that year was 3-9. They weren't Marshall.
Right. That's fair.
They were as good as Marshall, they would have lost. Just like last year. If Toledo was as good as Marshall, they'd have lost last year in the game too.
No doubt.
So,
Steve Perry up to bat. Thank you very much, Steve. Really appreciate it. In light of all the intense and mostly warranted criticism of Brian Mason's special teams crew, I applaud Joseph's steady punt returns and the kicking game and kick coverages as a whole. Progress.
I didn't understand this one.
Yeah, we never
mostly warranted criticism of Brian Mason's special teams. What exactly?
You talking about the preseason, from the spring game, maybe?
I don't. Maybe Steve, if you could kind of give us a heads up what you mean by that before we get out of here, I would appreciate that because I'm not quite sure. Because Vince, you could be right. Even think about that. He could be talking about from what we saw in the spring or in practices or in the first game. The first game, the kick return wasn't very good. That situation wasn't very good.
No, that's true. It wasn't. But I mean, it's been probably the most steady side of the ball up to this point, is special teams. So, but thank you for the super chat, Steve. Really appreciate that. Paul McConnell just hitting us with a sticker. Appreciate that very much as well. Tiller Reese. I'm not sure. Mr. Reese says, "Yo,
Tyler,
y'all are borderline experts. Us, the commoners, should be allowed to make these type of statements about coaches and players. We care about the result."
I don't know who he's talking about.
I mean, everybody's entitled to voice their opinion, and we've never said otherwise, as long as you're not belligerent about it. And I'm not saying that he is, but everybody's entitled.
I don't quite know. This is the problem with sometimes reading chats later, Tyler. I just don't know the context of what he's saying, so I apologize. But yes, that's why we allow chats. I mean, maybe it's because the Drew Buckner thing. Maybe it's because of that. But the reality is, no, it's not. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to turn this into a bitch fest where we're feeling the need to. It's just whatever. It's unfair. Nobody has any clue what the offense would have looked like today if Tyler Buckner was running it. It could have been way worse. It could have been even better.
Right.
We have no clue. Why can't we just enjoy what it looked like with Drew Pine
and not compare it to a guy that we're not going to see again for a year
because he's injured?
Right, exactly. Michael Burke, always with the interesting super chat amounts. He has the score, 45.
Yes, there's always a purpose behind it, which I love.
It's fantastic, man. It's so great. He says, Harry Heestand, and it is pronounced Heestand.
We need to Notre Dame to hang a couple 60 spots on people this year.
Good catch, Vince. Good catch, Vince.
But yes, the announcers did not pronounce Harry's name correctly.
What were they saying?
High stand.
Who was saying that? Was it Orlovsky? I heard he was doing.
Dude, they were terrible.
Orlovsky, man, I don't know. He had some good points, but then he clearly didn't know much about the teams at all, and he's just I don't know.
You guys were losing it during the show, during the game. I'm sitting there. I don't watch the
Brian.
I've yet to watch a TV copy of a game, guys. And Vince is like, yeah, they're talking about how linebackers the heart and soul. Vince was about to lose it. It was hilarious.
It was it was some of the worst commentary I've ever heard in my life. It was.
And it just my issue is they didn't do the research. They didn't watch any film. They didn't do it's your job, but whatever. It is what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So Michael Burke, back to your comment. Harry Heastan, Golden, their coaching really showed today. Love the Irish. I agree. I agree. That's what I can say to that.
Yeah, we were saying all that stuff, Michael, because we wanted to let your super chat hang out there for a little bit since you made a comment, not ask a question. It's a great question, but we just wanted to let it hang out there a little bit. We appreciate that very much. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing we said, guys. Like the newer coaches, like you're not gonna be in peak form in the first couple games. I didn't expect it to be as bad as it was up front, but we're starting to see these. Okay, this is what I hear East End offensive. Oh, so this is forgot what it looked like when offensive linemen drive a guy 5 yards off the ball. I forgot what that looked like. It's a fun thing.
Looks great.
It's a very fun thing.
It's always fun when you can tell what the running play actually is. It's awesome, isn't it? Like, oh wow, that was inside zone. Nice, cool.
Yeah. Did it look like that they ran some duo today, but not nearly as much as they have been? It was more zone related today. There was zone. I saw a ton of zone, counter, and stretch.
A lot of counter for sure.
Yeah. Which I liked. I like that combination.
I barely saw any duo. Now that I kind of think about it, I think it was mostly inside.
There was only one time I thought they might have run it that I can remember seeing it, but again, it was hard for me to see because I was literally looking straight at the offensive line, like I was from the side. So. Yeah.
All right. Next up is Maltavius. Thank you for the super chat. Remember when I was attacked last night on the message board explaining that we needed to be in Tommy Reese's corner? Yeah, me neither. Long live IB. That's a great
well played. Well played, man.
That was
well played.
Good.
Yes.
I was like, oh, great. What is this? And then,
very well played.
Well played, sir.
Yeah. Well
all right. But thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate that. Raymond Tipman, thank you for the super chat as well. Which is your favorite stat? 287 rushing yards or 289 passing yards? One false start.
Yes.
Yeah. Dude.
We've been doing too many podcasts together.
Yeah,
we're in each other's minds.
And the funny thing is, I saw it in Sean's head because he's going like this during the question. Sean was thinking what we said. He's like, "Yep." What's your favorite stat? Yes.
Should all synchronize yes at the same time.
In seriousness, do you guys want to answer that question? Like, what specific? If you had to pick one, what would it be?
The running game for me. I mean, I think that exemplifies what we saw tonight from the offensive line. I think that this exemplifies the fact that Notre Dame had a clear identity of how they wanted to use the three-headed monster. Like that, that was for me the rushing attack tonight.
Yeah, running game for me as well, Ryan. I agree.
I'll be different, and I'll say the false start because those were such drive-killing penalties last week, and to clean that up in 1 week, I thought is really good. Now, the other stuff you can easily make a case for, and I agree with you guys, but to be different, I will say the false start because I was really happy that they didn't have any drive-killing penalties tonight.
Yeah. If I have to pick one of those, I'd go with the passing yards because North Carolina's run defense is trash, and they should have run for 287 yards.
Sure they should.
And if they didn't thrash them with the pass game, they would have run for 360 yards. I mean, they could have run for more if they wanted to. The pass for me because I felt like because Ryan, you and I talked about this. Their most talented players on this team, on this defense, are in the secondary. And I thought because like up front, it was schemed well, but it was executed at a high level. Notre Dame's dudes were just way better than North Carolina's dudes. The pass game stuff came from really good scheme and execution.
Yeah. And
that made me happy. And if I had to say what was my favorite side of the game, I could go beyond. So of those three, I answered Raymond's question, and which I appreciate. Known Raymond a long time. Really appreciate that. If I could go away from that and then kind of pick my own stat, it'd be the 8.5 yards per pass attempt, which isn't a light the world on fire number, but it's a much better number than we saw the last 2 weeks. Last week they were 6.5. The week before they were 5.8. Yeah. Now they were 9.8 against Ohio State in the opener because they had a couple big plays and they didn't throw it very much. But 8.5 yards per attempt with the plays that they called today was a very, very efficient number.
Yeah,
and I'd say that's probably my favorite one of all those. But the past success was. Will you guys say this going into the game, Sean? I know you broke this game down. I know you guys up top broke this game down. I think we all kind of expected them to run the ball with some level of success today. The other part of the game was a little bit more of a question mark. I guess that's kind of why I leaned into the pass numbers.
It's fair. It's fair. I just think for like an identity factor, though, the rushing number just for me is just like, and 287, like 289 yards passing, like it's a good number, right? Nice number. But 287 rushing, that's like, yep, that's a number,
Yeah.
man. That's a nice number.
One less yard than what App State had on them.
Ooh. Don't do that to me.
No, I'm just saying, like you're not wrong, Ryan. Like, you're not wrong
know.
at all. It's just, to me, it's the quality of the competition. Like, the 280, like App State averaged 6.7 yards per carry against them at 288 yards. Notre Dame averaged 5.6 yards per carry. Now, again, part of that's a little misleading. Notre Dame would have had one more yard if they didn't down it at the end of the game, right? But it just, I kind of expected them to have some level of success there. Because what was the one thing you and I said we didn't want to do, Ryan? Remember we talked about this in the keys of the game? I don't want to see them just come and bully them only because they could, right?
Yep.
I want to see them have success throwing the football. And so that's why I go with that number.
Fair enough.
But as far as the identity thing, Ryan, I do think you nailed that, though. This is what, like, Sean, this is what we thought this team was going to be about up front, right? And so from an identity, which of these best represents the identity of this football team? Then now I'm cooking with you on that 287 rushing yard, Sean.
Yeah, it's definitely the rushing yards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is Tyler Evans. Thanks for the super chat. Let's go Middle Tennessee State. LOL. And the U is not back.
I lost a lot of games today because of points. Like, I picked the right winners today, but I picked bad points, man. Like, most of the teams I picked to win today didn't cover. But that's when I got right. When I saw that line, it was like 28 for Miami. I was like, have you watched Miami? Did you watch them only beat Southern Miss by 23? And by the way, Middle Tennessee's first game of the year, they lost to James Madison 44-7. Have you guys ever, besides Marshall with Randy Moss, have you ever seen an FCS team make the kind of successful jump that James Madison has made so far?
I was going to say, James Madison won today, right? They had a nice upset
they scored
win today.
15 in the fourth quarter to beat App State at App State.
Incredible, man. Incredible. Good for them.
Yeah. North Dakota State got an L against Arizona, and James Madison comes up, and they're smacking people, man. So, yes, really, really good.
Brian, did you see Jay Nott almost had 300 yards today against Arizona?
Last I saw, it was 42-24. But, yeah, I mean, it kind of puts into context how good the Notre Dame defense was against that run game last week, because they couldn't run the ball at all last week. At all. Let's go to the next super chat, guys. And that's a good one, Tyler Evans. I enjoyed watching Miami lose to Middle Tennessee. That's even worse than Marshall, fellas. That's way worse than Marshall. And Middle Tennessee spanked them. Like, it was like 31-10 at one point in time.
Yep.
Kevin O'Neill. Ryan, you mind reading these?
Yeah. Kevin O'Neill. Thank you, Kevin, so much for the super chat. It says, fellas, your post-game wrap is the best. Should we go 10-2? Would we be ranked in the top 10 in a New Year's Six bowl game? I
would think so. The latter, guys, can we all agree on that's a no-brainer? Notre Dame at 10-2 with wins over Marshall, wins Marshall. I wish. Sean, thanks for joining, buddy. Appreciate you. Can we agree that if Notre Dame runs the table with wins over USC and Clemson, and BYU, it's a no-brainer that they are going to be in the New Year's Six bowl? I think the bigger question mark is the 10-2 being in the top 10. Yeah. I would imagine so, simply because of the quality of the wins they would have to earn.
Yep.
They would have to beat three teams that most likely will be ranked when they play.
Yes.
So I would not be completely shocked if Notre Dame is back in the top 25, at least in one of the polls
this week
by the BYU game.
Not
maybe not. AP, they didn't get any votes, but coaches polls, they got votes last week.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there was a lot of teams that took L's. Like, would you have Miami ranked ahead of Notre Dame right now?
No. Nope. And Florida lost, right? And they were on their way out. If they lost that game, they were on their way out. So that's another spot that's going to be open, right? There's going to be spots open where Notre Dame can creep into the 20s, I think.
Right. Because not only is Florida 2-2, but they had an ugly win over South Florida last week.
Yes, they did. They let up 150 yards rushing on 17 carries to USF running back last week. Like, they are not a very good football team. So
I'll tell you one team that's definitely needs to go from unranked to ranked in the top 20 is Minnesota.
Yeah, man. Stomped Michigan State.
Stomped them. They 34-7 at Michigan State.
Yeah.
They're 4-0 now.
And Minnesota didn't have their best receiver. Chris Altman-Bell was out too, which is pretty crazy.
But yeah, Kevin, I would answer your question. I would be willing to bet yes and yes on those two, but I feel more confident saying yes to the latter than the former.
Sure, absolutely.
So
It's gonna be hard to keep out a 10-2 Notre Dame team because, and I will remind people that the New Year's Six. It's not. I mean, it's about if you're eligible. If Notre Dame is eligible for the New Year's Six, right, and there's a legitimate chance for them to get in, they'll get in because of who they are, and it's all about draw.
Because the committee will move teams once they've picked the 4. The committee has shown they'll mess with rankings in order to get the bowl matchups they want.
Absolutely,
and they should, because it should be about money, not
absolutely. I know,
but but they'll have earned it. They'll have a win over Clemson and a win over US. They'd have to have a win over Clemson and USC.
Yes,
and Clemson didn't look great today, but you know what? They did what they needed to do to win. So beat a ranked team on the road. So
that's absolutely true.
Brent Venables ain't there anymore, fellas. They didn't handle that the slow mesh, the way that Brent Venables used to.
It was great in the first half, man. They had like 4 yards rushing there in like the fourth quarter, second quarter, and then the second half they were just running down Clemson's throat. It was weird. It was weird.
Very strange. Vince, you got this?
Yeah, I do. Relicu. I'm sure I'm butchering that. I apologize, but thank you for the super chat. How much of North Carolina's big plays were defensive issues and misses versus North Carolina just being very talented at wide receiver and quarterback? P.S. Love the win. This one was big and what we needed.
I would say, I mean, Brian, for me, like I again, we're going to be able to see the coaches film tonight, kind of going into upon further review tomorrow. But for me, when I saw, because they played it back a couple times, and this is specifically the last touchdown that they had, right? So you have a corner fire from the boundary, and it looked like they were playing cover 2 to the field. One, I don't know why they're playing cover 2 in this situation.
There's no way Al Golden made that call. No way.
Me and Brian talked about this before the show to this question, right? And I was just like, I think Cam Hart didn't get the right call. Like, that must be what it is, because which
made it even worse that he just stood there on 4th and 21. If you're unsure of what you're doing, just take off running down the field towards the sticks.
Right. Yes.
Right. It looked like
4th and 21, man. Like, it was just
squatting in a cover 2. I mean, it just did. But again, I hate that call because they're just running verts there.
But I don't think that's what I'm saying. I don't think that was the call, because the safety wasn't getting off the hash in a way that made it seem like he would be covering. And even if it was cover 2, if the inside guy runs vertical and your guy runs vertical, you climb.
Yes.
Even in cover 2, you don't just sit there. So it was to answer a really cute question, guys. I felt like it's both.
Yes.
I thought the first game they beat Cam Hart. The guy, it was a scramble play. Guy broke up. Cam was late, react to it, recovered. Guy makes a nice catch on a really well-thrown ball. The play to Jaden Mickey was a little bit of both. Jaden jumped too early, but it was also a great ball and a great catch. The last two, to me, were great ball by Drake May, but great ball of a guy that got beat. And Sean said that he thought that Cam thought the play was going to be something else. I didn't see it. I was watching the other side of the coverage. He thought it was going to be something else and just allowed the guy to run right by him.
It was bizarre. I mean, because Brian, my first thought is, okay, they're in a 2-high shell, right? 2 safeties. Yep. And the corner fire, I'm like, okay, you're probably just rotating to cover 3, right? Like safety goes to where the corner would be, safety middle of the field, corner deep third. And it's a 4th and 21, right? So like, we're not letting anything behind us, right? Like that was why it was so bizarre. The one with I didn't really see the one with Clarence Lewis before that, the 80-yarder. It looked like it was cover 2 again, but then Xavier Watts took a bad angle coming over. So I don't know if it was really Lewis's fault. I know he didn't contact him enough and climb. So like either way, he's at fault to a degree, but I don't know if it's more Xavier Watts took a terrible angle, more of the fault, or if it was Clarence Lewis. We'll have to see on the film. So
that's the thing, is like, I had no clue what they were trying to call. Like, we're just guessing, because like I doubt that they're calling cover 2 with a corner fire. That is the thing. I did not love the corner fire on 4th and 21. I love the aggressiveness, but I just
I agree with that.
Drop and let them catch it at 18.
Keep it in front of you. That's it.
It'd be different if it was 3rd and 21, but that's one I didn't like.
Yeah,
I'll say this: if you're going to make a bad call, I'd rather you make a bad call being aggressive.
Sure,
true.
I would.
I agree with that.
I really, really would. Yeah. So.
Relicu has another one. Drew Pine's confidence and the evolution of this offensive line are going to be the X factor for the Irish for the rest of the season. Love the growth.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's a big part of it, right? I think that it's, especially for how this offense is built right now, we know that it's not going to be like this. Let me rephrase. There's going to be explosive plays in the passing game, but it's not going to be at a super heavy volume, right? Like, I think that we can mostly agree with that. It's going to be a running team that is going to need to be advantageous in the passing game and create some explosive plays, but it's still going to be based upon the fact of like, hey, we need to move the line of scrimmage and we need to stay in front of the sticks and stay in front of the chains. So for me, yes, I agree that offensive line is going to be paramount and Drew Pine playing good football. Absolutely. I would also add that wide receivers need to keep making more plays. We saw that a little bit today with Lorenzo.
They still need to change the personnel. I'm sorry.
Yes,
they do. I completely agree with that. No doubt. And this is the team that Marcus Freeman envisioned. Like, this type of a game plan of a team, right? It's a run first, play action. That's what he envisioned, and that's what they're moving towards, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how close they get. I mean, that's
Yeah, I still think there's some personnel. I think, Vince, you made the point about the tight ends earlier. I think is the tight ends, because Holden State started today.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys see that they did 22? They did some 22 personnel today.
Yes,
did you guys notice that?
I didn't notice.
Yeah, they were doing some 22 personnel today.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. I mean, the first two plays of the game, they went 22 personnel and threw the football.
Yeah. There was a play where they ended up giving the ball to Logan Diggs, I want to say, and I didn't even realize he was in the game, and I'm pretty sure that was 22.
Well, I love that. I love that, though. I mean, what is the positions that you can take advantage, right? It's the fact that you have three-headed monster right. running back, and you have tight ends that are all different and versatile and can be weapons in the passing game.
But here, that's it right there, Ryan. That's it. I was going to add it, but you nailed it, because the three kids that are next up at tight end after Kevin Bauman are all kids that can hurt you in the pass game. Holden Stace, Eli Raridan, and Kane Braun can all make plays in the pass game. So yes, you are correct. So you can go 22, and one play you're double tight, back, another back, and one receiver, and then the very next play you're empty.
Yep.
And I think I think the play where they had the empty sack, I believe that play was that, what drive was that on? I'm trying to find that drive. I believe, guys, that was on out of 22 personnel as well. I'm trying to find that play in my notes. Mm-hmm. But I believe, yes, it was 13 personnel. Okay. That play was 13 personnel. But similar principle, they went empty out of it.
Right.
Yep. And I didn't have a problem with the empty. You know what I mean? Like, didn't necessarily always love the routes out of it, but I didn't have a problem with the empty, because I get it. It's 1st and 10, and you've got 5 pass game weapons on the field, even though 3 of them are tight ends. I liked it. I liked it. With
the job that Eli Raridan's doing as a blocker right now too, it's only a matter of time before we get him on a delay or a naked or whatever it is, and he's going to just be wide open in the flat and running for a big gain. It's going to happen soon.
Well, I'm waiting on them to do a play action with him right up the seam as well. I mean, that's another thing I'm wanting to see. I would really like to see that as well. So,
Andy Nation, thanks for the super chat. Estime reminds me of a Bama back monster. He's built.
I have a comp. He's Eddie Lacy before he started eating too much.
Ooh, that's mean. True.
What, before he started eating too much?
I said it's true.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Hey, man, the only person I ever remember that had a clause in his contract that he had to be below a certain weight was Eddie Lacy with the Green Bay Packers. So.
What's worse, a clause in your contract for a skill player saying you got to be under a certain weight, or a clause for a quarterback saying you have to watch at least X amount of film each day?
I think the weight one's still for me, but it's close. It's a good conversation.
I'm going to go with the quarterback one, because that was a much bigger contract.
They eventually rid that one out, though. And,
just because they were shamed. I mean, there's a reason they put it in the first place.
Of course there was. They don't just randomly put that in. Oh, we put this in for all of our quarterbacks. No, you don't. Yeah, exactly. Brian Stevens, thanks for the super chat. No question, but we'll appreciate the super chats. Fayshawn, Alabama flip. It was wonderful. Fashawn, Alabama flip. All right.
Yeah.
It was wonderful to see Prince Kollie out there making plays. And he was out there on the first drive. Like, they didn't wait to get him in the game, which I did appreciate. And he was making plays. He filled pretty well on the first play of the game. And I mean, he was out there for a few plays.
Was he out there for the first play of the game?
Not sure about that.
Or were you saying his
early.
first play of the game?
It was his first for sure.
Okay.
It was
First
one
drive.
of the first. It was the first drive for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I made a note of it.
I think I have a take with him. I don't know if you guys agree with this, but he was the best run fill linebacker in a limited sample size tonight by a decent margin, in my opinion.
Yeah,
just downhill.
It was the third series. Yeah.
Third series. Okay.
It was the third series, and the note I made, Vince, was inside fire. Running back fell down because he was like, he saw Prince coming and like, oh crap, and tried to cut real quick, like 3 yards behind, and just fell. Right? I mean, so Prince basically like made that guy. That guy lost his soul when he saw Prince flying downhill. He's like, oh shoot,
I would too.
It was a weird cut, like yes. Yeah, so right. It was impressive.
Yeah.
Hey, can I also say this too? North Carolina, they blew up North Carolina's screen game today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like blew it up. Like they tried to run that little inside tunnel from the slot that they gashed Notre Dame for with that big play last year. And the first time Mickey and Tariq Bracy both read it and ate it up, and the second time Tariq literally blew it up for a 3-yard loss. And then they also tried that throwback thing that I thought the defense did a great job of. And do you know what cornerback read it? Jaden Mickey. And Maris Luafau was the linebacker that read it. And Jaden was getting ready to come up and attack it, and then he was like, nope, and he dropped under coverage, and then Maris attacked the quarterback, and there was nowhere to go with the football.
Mickey's a really smart football player, man. He's really smart.
And that was the frustrating thing about today, because there was a lot of really smart stuff that they did coverage-wise, not just schematically, but the players being really smart in coverage. That's why the dumb plays at the end frustrate you, because it makes people not appreciate just how much good stuff they did today. It's like 215 out of their 367 yards, fellas, today came on 3 flipping plays.
That's so frustrating.
Or, excuse me, 4 flipping plays.
So frustrating. But those are the things that you can look at, like you said earlier.
Right.
You win. You can be like, guys, 4 plays. We clean that up. This is a dominating performance. You know what I mean? From a stat standpoint, and from a score standpoint as well.
Yeah.
So, all right. Last one in the bullpen here. Tyler Evans, thank you for the super chat. I know Michigan won, but see what happens when they play a somewhat decent team. I believe they beat Maryland by less than a score. Does that sound right? If I remember.
It was 34-27.
Yeah, but I mean, but it was 34-19 pretty late in the fourth. But
I'll say this though, it was a competitive game for a long time.
Yeah.
Michigan pulled away a little bit late, but then Maryland came back and had a chance to. I think they scored like less than a minute to go. And then had a chance for an onside kick, I believe. But Maryland was also winning that game at one point in time in the second quarter. And Michigan's first touchdown came on an 8-yard drive. So Maryland battled today. It was not your typical Mike Locksley in a big game folding performance today. Michigan just had the better players.
Yes.
So,
Blake Corum went wild today. Someone just put in the chat. I think it was like 235 on 30 carries or something like that. He went wild today. Yeah.
Maryland battled them today. They just don't. They just don't have the players that. The big one was the interception that
Talia threw
deep in his own. That's the thing that just crushes him. That was rough.
Yes,
that was rough.
He got hurt, I think, in the game too. They had a backup in at the end.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but yeah. So I mean, that's where we're at, guys. So I think that's it for the super chats tonight. So is that going to kind of do it for our show?
I think it is. There was a mention of one earlier, so I'm going to go look for it, but I did not.
Oh, here comes another.
Who was it from? Vince, you want to bring that one up? Who was the other one from? Somebody?
Zach Martin.
Okay, I'll go look for Zach's super chat. You get the next one that just came up.
Brian Stevens, thanks so much for the super chat. Can the O-line dominate BYU the same way? And how terrible were the calls on both sides? Talking about the refs.
Yeah, the officiating today was not good, fellas.
It was bad.
But I'll say this: it was consistently bad.
That's true. I don't think it was for either side. I mean, I think both teams benefited from.
Did you guys see the targeting? Should that have been targeting?
I don't think so. No. It looked like
it was close. It was close. It was close. I mean, I don't think it was head-to-head contact, so I would say no. But I do think it was kind of close. Like in real time, I thought it was kind of a bang play. But when you slow it down, it doesn't look as bad as it did in just real time.
That's the point of replay, though, right? I mean, that's
right.
No, I agree.
You fix it, but
it was definitely not like last week's one. Absolutely not.
Yeah,
absolutely not.
I mean, I thought the officials I thought they had some bad calls, but I also thought they got some calls right. Like there were some calls where I didn't think the pass interference on Tariq Bracy was pass interference, or not Tariq Bracy, Chris Tyree on the 4th down was pass interference.
Mhm.
I just like live the angle as I didn't think, and then I saw the replay and the guy grabs his right hip and yanks it. I mean that's pass interference. I thought they got that right. I know Mac lost his ever-loving mind after that play, but it was passing. I mean the replay showed us very clearly, and he kept saying, "Look at the replay." I'm like, "Oh, Mac, that's not the angle you want to go, buddy." Because the replay shows to me it was very clearly pass interference. But yeah, it was a poorly officiated game, but I thought it was poorly officiated just overall, not pro Notre Dame or pro North Carolina. I don't think Mac Brown would probably agree with that, but
okay. The officiating didn't lose him the game though either. So.
I thought they were going to toss him. I don't know how much of that they showed on TV, but I mean he was out there for
really early and then got every bit out of it. Which they should have given him a second one, and that would have tossed him.
Mac Brown, yeah. He was losing it.
They gave him the flag really early in that.
His players were losing it too, man. Did you see the push by Tony Grimes out of bounds into the cameraman?
Yeah.
Like, guy, what are we doing, man? What are we doing?
They were very undisciplined.
The second late hit, the one right after that, I don't think was a late hit. I think
it was a late hit. It was a late hit from the standpoint of he did knock into him pretty hard and knocked him down. I just don't think it was intentional. He got bumped into him, but it's kind of like when you get bumped into the punter. If you get driven into the punter, it's still, or the returner, I mean, it's still considered, it's still considered a penalty. You can't hit the punter, the punt returner, or even if you're pushed into him or blocked into him. I get what you guys are saying. I think by rule though, it needed to be a penalty, but I felt bad for the kid because it was very clearly not intentional. He wasn't trying to hit him late.
And I will also say, we're talking about rules. You can't spin the ball rule. I think that's pretty stupid.
That was stupid.
Sorry, I had no problem.
Well, I mean, look, in the NCAA, you're not allowed to celebrate like that. I mean, and here's the thing about it. If they want to change the rule, say you are allowed to spin the ball if you're not losing by more than 10 points. Like, bro, you just scored you're down 45-32 now, and your team has to go for 2 from the 18-yard line because you wanted to celebrate and spin a ball when no one covered you, right? In a game you're getting blasted. Like, come on, bro. Like,
there was a play near the goal line. I think Notre Dame was winning 38-20 at the time, and I forget what linebacker was for North Carolina. They made a tackle for loss near the goal line, and he started getting up like he had just won the Super Bowl, man. I'm just like, fellas.
That really annoys me.
You're losing by a little bit right now. Like, I don't think this is the time to celebrate, but just my opinion.
The whole spinning into the ball thing, like, I feel like as a coach, I'm reaming his 100%. I just don't think it should be a 15-yard penalty. That's all I'm saying.
I get that. I mean, it's one of those things that we could argue all day. Should it be a rule? I wish they'd let the kids have a little bit more fun. I mean, whatever. Whatever. If it's a rule, is it a bad representation or a bad look, or does it mean he's a classless kid if a kid scores and spins the ball? No, it's silly. It's just it's dumb. It shouldn't be a rule. However, the kid knows it's a rule. That's my thing, Vince. Like, it's a rule. So, I mean, you can say it. That's fine, and that's different than saying it shouldn't have been a penalty. Yeah. It should have been a penality.
No, yes, I agree with that. It absolutely should have been a penalty because that's the rule. I think it's
right.
Yeah,
right. Just the
penalty shouldn't be the rule, right? But again, that's the rule. Now, the penalty should have been a penalty. The rule should not be the rule. Is that what we're all kind of agreeing on?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. It should not be a penalty. It's silly.
Like, the announcer arguing about it, and the play-by-play guy was like, "Dude, it's a rule. They have to call it. It's not like the referee decides what rules to enforce and which rules not to." And Orlovsky was just like, "Oh, he shouldn't have called it. That's a terrible call." Like, no, dude. I mean, like, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Officials can't say we're going to make this call because we don't like the rule. We're going to not call this because we don't like the rule.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's not their role. Like, if they break a rule, you call it. I mean, that's but
Zach Martin, I just went through the entire show and I don't see anything.
I didn't see anything either, but
so I just went back to the very beginning and I don't see your super chat, buddy. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I must have missed it.
To the first part of Brian's question about if they could dominate BYU, though, I think we didn't really get on that. That's something that we'll talk about during the BYU week, obviously, right? Because we'll have to do a little more film work. I'll say right now, though, just based upon what I saw against Oregon, it's possible, sure. I mean, if Notre Dame keeps climbing in the right direction, but again, we'll have to watch those one-on-one matchups that game week.
And I thought Baylor struggled a little bit running the ball because I thought Baylor was very uncreative with their rushing game. And I also thought that Baylor really didn't show much of a passing threat in that game either. I mean, BYU was just like, we're not going to let you beat us running the football. And they didn't. I just didn't think it was an incredibly it was a pretty ugly game by Baylor all around offensively, and it still went to overtime. To your point, Ryan, based on what they look like against Oregon, I would agree with you. They had those issues last year as well. And USC rushed for 210 on them. USC. Mm-hmm. They gave up 223 yards to UAB in the bowl game. They gave up 216 to Virginia. They gave up 303 to Baylor last year. Gave up 174 to South Florida. And somebody said today that Wyoming was gashing them, but I didn't see it. But hey guys, I got to run. I got to go. Yeah. So I got to go be with my family. So Vince, can you give me a call when we're done?
All right.
Go Irish.
I love the drop in. That's great. Okay. So we've got one more super chat, I do believe, to get to here. And it is from ND Nation. Thank you very much. He says, impressed by Pine's accuracy. No disagreement from me, because I was nervous about his accuracy when he was named the starter. Not that I would have named anyone else or anything like that, but I was worried about it. I mean, no doubt about it. And he proved me wrong today, and that is much appreciated. I thought some of his throws to Michael Mayer when he was covered were really on point. I thought some of his long balls were on point. I was impressed. I really was. So I agree, ND Nation, and I hope he can continue that. And he was schemed into some of that, which is fantastic, but he needs to continue to be accurate. So, it was good stuff. What say you, sir?
No, I agree. I think that the only two throws that I can really think off the top of my head that I would say are misses for Drew Pine in this game was the one deep ball that we talked about a little bit earlier, right? Braden Lindsey had a step, just overthrew that one slightly. And then the one where he's kind of off scripts, wanted to run the football, then the linebackers kind of come up and he throws the ball over their head to Michael Mayer that he kind of short-armed a little bit. And I kind of throw that one out. Like, you need to have it, but like he's off platform, he's on the run. Like it's not as easy as people think it is in that regard, right? But I think that for me, he was mostly on time. He was very accurate, and his ball placement I thought was really good all night, Vince. Because you could have general accuracy, but like sometimes the balls are behind you a little bit. You cut the momentum that players have, the yards after catch ability. I thought that we saw that from Drew Pine tonight. It was consistently on time, accurate, and good ball placement for the most part tonight.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So that is going to do it for this edition of the postgame show, Ryan. We were happy to have Sean and Brian for as long as we were able to have them. You and I lasted the whole time. So,
oh yes,
power on, baby.
We're the survivors, man.
That's right. That's right. So we get to move on to next week, and no, but so that was the game. Make sure you join the message board, hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, share this podcast, leave a 5-star review, visit the IB merch store for the best merch. And as always, go Irish. Thank you, Mace, AK. Really appreciate that. I'm not sure what the combination is going to be tomorrow night for Upon Further Review. It may be Brian and I. It may be Ryan and I. Just saying. We'll see what happens. But we will have an Upon Further Review. At least that is the plan at the moment at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. And then we will move into our bi-week shows. So those might be a little bit different than normal, but make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you hit that notification bell so that you know when things are coming, because you never know. We will have our 1 o'clock shows, and we will also have the IB Nation Sports Talk shows at 6 o'clock, Monday through Thursday. So make sure you stay tuned for those. Hey, just because it's a bye week doesn't mean we're taking the week off, people. So make sure you stick with Irish Breakdown, both irishbreakdown.com, the YouTube channel, the podcast, all of the above. So for Ryan, I'm Vince, We will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown podcast.